Hey guys. This is part 14 of What If Naruto Was Azula's Bodyguard. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 39. Being Ready and Being Watched. Location: Konoha. The quite noticeable absence of Naruto began to stir up the crowd. He was the reason most of the people there had come. They wanted to see him in combat. The others were just second fiddles. But now, all they had were said fiddles. Where the hell is he? Demanded Kiba. Most of the people came here to see him. If he doesn't want to show up, that is his choice, Azula told him curtly. Everyone looked at her. What? Did something happen with you and Naruto? Katara asked hesitantly. Are you him? She asked back, more irritated than curt now. No. Then don't butt in on things you don't know about. Katara winced from the snap. Okay, sorry, the waterbender apologized. The Kages were wondering the same thing. Where is that brat? Anoki asked. I don't know, but let's get this exam started, said A. He may be come to see the Jinchuriki, but they couldn't afford to wait around for him. Should we not wait for him? Mei suggested. He is just one person. There are 5 others who are waiting to fight. He's right, Tsunade declared as she stood up. She walked to the banister. Welcome everyone, she said, projecting her voice and getting the attention of everyone there. Thank you for coming to Konoha for the Chunin exams. We will now begin the final exam. We also ask you not to leave the arena until all the matches are done. Now then, enjoy yourselves. When he heard that, the proctor, Genma Shiranui, turned to the 5 on the field. Alright, listen up, he said. There are no rules in these fights. The match will go on until one of the fighters is dead or claims defeat. If I say a match is over, I will step in and stop it, no arguments. Are there any questions? No one said a word. In that case, everybody except for Saka and Suigetsu head to the waiting area. Karen and Yugo started to walk away while Zuko looked at Sokka's hood-covered face. You ready? He asked the tribesman. Of course I am, he answered. He looked at the wolf next to him. Akela, go with him. Akela gave him a pointed look. I'll be fine. Besides, do you really want to attack a guy who can turn into water? He might give you an impromptu bath. He winced and finally nodded, padding over to Zuko. This might be an interesting match, Kisame said. The Akatsuki had a private booth, allowing them to talk freely. He and the rest of the Akatsuki were standing around Conan, who was the only person sitting. What makes you say that, HM? Deidara, a former IWA shinobi with long blonde hair done up in a half ponytail and with a bang covering his left eye, asked. We don't know much about his abilities, but he was a realist who knew that people had to die that day. I would say that since we last saw him, he's changed a lot, Itachi explained, though his eyes remained on Saka. I suspect that someone must have trained him, which explains why we see a different demeanor in him. On the other hand, Suigetsu is the younger brother of Mangetsu Hozuki, Kisame pointed out. And how is that relevant? Kakuzu, a tall man with a white hood and a black mask covering his head, leaving his green eyes visible, asked. Mangetsu was one of the few members of the 7 swordsmen I know of that had mastered all 7 of the blades, even Samahata, who is quite picky when to wielders, he explained. It'll be interesting to see if his younger brother has even half of his talent. Man, I can't believe I'm fighting you, Suigetsu complained as he stood in front of his opponent. I wanted to fight Uzumaki. Why? You'd get a longer fight with me, Saka told him. Are you stupid? You'd think I'd be able to beat him that easily? Actually, the way the 3 of us figured it out, he'd beat you in 5 seconds. What did you say? He snarled. You heard me. Or did you forget what he did to your head? He reached for the Kubikarabocho. Alright, that's it. Let's fight. In that case, begin. Genma ordered before stepping back. Suigetsu charged forward, swinging the Kubikarabocho. I'm gonna slice your head off, he declared, swinging the giant blade down. You'd think I'm gonna let that happen? Saka remarked. With a quick speed, he pulled out his club and swatted the sword aside. Suigetsu was surprised, almost falling thanks to the momentum. But he regained his balance and turned into a spin, swinging the Kubikuribocho in a circle. Saka stepped back to avoid the strike. His opponent pressed forward, keeping the sword moving. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Not going to fight back?" Saka stopped, ducked under the swing of the blade, and then swung his club upwards. It struck Suigetsu in the stomach, causing water to splash out. He withdrew the club before he lost his grip. "A blunt instrument against him won't do any good, and I can't pull out my Jien or my boomerang until I'm certain he's shown all the moves he knows with the Kubikuribocho," he analyzed the situation. "Well, I'll have to make do." "Why hasn't Saka attacked?" Aang asked as he watched his friend avoid Suigetsu's strikes. "I thought he would have charged straight in and attacked." "He might have, if I didn't beat it out of his head," Jiraiya's voice spoke next to all of them. He was standing on the stairs. "Lord Jiraiya? I thought you were protecting Lady Tsunade," Tenten said, surprised to see him standing there. "Oh, I am, but the one up there is just a clone." He gestured briefly with a hand up to the Kage box to emphasize his point. "I figured that I'd keep an eye on you guys." "We are perfectly capable of protecting ourselves, Lord Jiraiya," Shino told him. "I meant them." He looked at Aang and the others. "I'm here to make sure they don't do anything stupid." "How wonderful, somebody to keep an eye on us because they think we might do something," Toph said sarcastically from where she lounged in the seat. If she could see, her feet would have been up. But she wasn't, and they were planted firmly on the ground. "Sorry, it's just a precaution." "Whatever. So why isn't Saka attacking?" Suki asked the Toad Sage, getting his attention while the battle went on below. Her sight was trying both to look at the old man and her boyfriend at the same time. It wasn't working like she wanted. "If he had, the match wouldn't have lasted long," he explained. "He is smart, and tries to keep a cool head in the middle of a fight, but he just attacked. His analyzing skills were virtually non-existent, and that can get him killed. So, I took some time and taught him how to analyze an opponent." Saka kept his club close as Suigetsu kept on attacking. Every time the sword got close, he would knock it away. He kept dodging and evading, infuriating Suigetsu. "Come on, fight back!" he shouted. "I'll fight when I want to," the tribesman replied. This only infuriated him more. He let out an angry shout and pressed forward. He kept swinging, trying to cut him. Saka would keep on blocking and deflecting. Then he did something unexpected. He suddenly charged forward, hammering away at Suigetsu with the club. Suigetsu was caught off guard and found using Kubikuribocho to block. Suddenly the battle's direction had changed. Saka was leading, pushing his opponent back. And that wasn't all he was doing. He can use the sword as a shield, he noted. Now to figure out if it will stay in that one position, or if he'll move it to accommodate. He tried to attack from every possible angle. Suigetsu kept using the sword as a shield, but always kept it in the same position. Sure, he would move it to block a strike from a different angle, but the handle always stayed close to his head while the blade pointed downwards. Saka didn't relent in his assault. "I have to keep going. He could be deceiving me. I have to be sure. What's up with this guy?" Suigetsu asked himself. 1 minute, he's avoiding my strikes, and the next, he trying to pound me into the ground. He did his best to block the assault. He also watched his opponent. "Hang on, there!" Every time he attacks, he steps forward, lifting his foot off the ground. If he timed it right, he could use Kubikuribocho to trip him. Once the chance appeared, he quickly slid Kubikuribocho underneath Saka's foot, making it land in the middle of the circle. He smirked and yanked the blade up. Saka's foot got caught, and so, by extension, was he. He fell to the ground, crashing hard. The club flew out of his hand, landing a good distance away from him. "Okay, I probably pushed it too far," he thought. On the other hand, now he knew Suigetsu can do that. "Well, it seems that you finally began to fight back," Suigetsu said. "Pity I have to end it though. I was starting to have fun." He stuffed the Kubikuribocho into the ground, flashed through hand seals, and then pointed his right hand at Saka, folding every finger except for his index finger and thumb. Suetun, Mizudepo no Jutsu, Water Style, Water Gun Jutsu. A small amount of water compressed itself onto the tip of the finger, and fired itself at Saka. He rolled out of the way and the water struck the ground. He quickly stood up but jumped back as Suigetsu fired off another round of water. "Oh, do you want to dance?" he asked Saka. "Then let's dance." That was the Mizudepo no Jutsu. Ao said with surprise as he watched the jutsu being used repeatedly. But I thought only members of the Hozuki clan could do that jutsu, Chojuro protested. Well, it seems that Brad is member of that clan, Anoki remarked. I can actually see the Naide Mizuki in him. I take it that's not a good thing, old man. Kuratsuchi asked her leader with a slight teasing tone. He ignored the tone. I hated that man. I was quite glad when he was killed. He had celebrated when he heard the news. Then he mourned his teacher, who had killed and was killed by the same man. But the question remains, Lord Anoki, what is a member of the Hozuki clan doing with Kusa? Mei asked him. That is, if the team is from Kusa after all, Tsunade remarked, getting the attention of everyone there. Where else could they be from? Chojuro asked. No one answered him. Saka was running around, trying to dodge for all his worth. The small balls of water kept missing him by mere inches. And yet, the odd thing was that Suigetsu wasn't getting angry at continually missing him. If anything, he was looking more and more happy. This is so much fun, he declared with an almost maniacal grin. Are you getting frustrated now? Actually, I've faced worse, Saka replied, keeping himself in control. Is this all you've got? No. I have more. He brought up his left hand and started to fire water from that one as well. The amount of water coming at him had been doubled as well as the rate it was coming at him. I had to open my mouth, the tribesman cursed himself. He had to open his mouth, Jiraiya said with a sigh. You've been training him for a month, and you're surprised when he does that? Tofast? No, I was just hoping he wouldn't do it during the middle of the fight. What I want to know is how that guy is waterbending, Aang said, pointing at Suigetsu. I thought he was a shinobi, not a bender. He's not waterbending. He's using the Mizudepo no Jutsu, which can only be used by the Hozuki clan of Kirigakure, the Toad Sage explained. Why can only they use it? Katara asked him. It seemed easy to duplicate, but she would have to practice seeing if she could. That clan has the ability to completely liquefy their bodies. It's called the Suka no Jutsu, hydrification jutsu. When they use this jutsu, anything but an airtight container can hold them. The only downside we know of is that they are vulnerable to Raiton, lightning-style, ninjutsu. Or probably just plain lightning, Azula remarked shortly. Besides, if he can turn his body into water, then that means a waterbender can defeat him easily. He regarded her for a moment. She seemed more concerned about the fight than him. Well, that's possible, I suppose, he admitted. But we've never had a waterbender in the Chunin exams. Well now, that is quite interesting, Kisame said with a grin as he watched the fight. What makes you say that, Kisame? Toby, a member whose face was covered by a spiral-patterned orange mask with a hole showing his right eye, asked him. Not a single member of the Hozuki clan I knew could use the Mizudepo no Jutsu dual-handed. Seems easy enough, Deidara noted. Actually, it takes a good amount of concentration to fire off a round. The fact that Suigetsu can do it with both hands, at the same time and such a rapid rate is quite impressive. Saka was running circles around Suigetsu, dodging every piece of water shot at him. I did not endure that hell of a month just to be killed by water. He swore to himself. If I ever let that happen, it'll be because I pissed off Katara. Suigetsu wanted to keep up the jutsu going, but the effects were already getting to him. The rate of fire began to slow down until it finally died. Saka stopped where he stood and saw Suigetsu panting for breath. You're out of energy already? He asked. Something along those lines, he answered. Fortunately, I know how to get it back and keep you in the dark. He flashed through a different set of hand seals, raised his right hand to his mouth in a half seal, and raised his left hand over his head. Suiton, Kirigakure no Jutsu, water style, hiding in mist jutsu, he said, spewing out white mist. The arena began to be thick with the stuff. Saka couldn't see anything past his own hand. I was beginning to wonder when he'd bring that out, Kisame said as he watched the mist thicken. So, he can use it as well, Itachi noted. The kid was well on his way to becoming a member of the swordsmen when I left, he told his partner. Learning that jutsu is mandatory. Besides, he needs to rejuvenate himself, and the mist gives him the perfect cover. What do you mean? Kaka's asked. A downside of using the Suka no Jutsu is that the user has to stay hydrated at all times. The kid figured that if he tried to drink water in the open, Saka would have pounced on the chance to attack him. So, he gave himself some cover, he explained, still keeping his eyes on the field. So, he brought in the Kirigakyu no Jutsu, Niji stated. That might cause problems for Saka. The mist had thickened to the point he couldn't see where the combatants were. All they had to go on was their hearing. What makes you say that? Katara asked. The Kirigakyu no Jutsu is a famous jutsu from Kiri, Jiraiya explained for her. As you can see, it covers an area in mist, hiding the user from his opponents. The thickness of the mist is determined by much chakra was put into it. This jutsu can go hand in hand with the technique to silently kill. Silently kill? Aang repeated with a worried look. He nodded. Masters of silent killing can use the mist to sneak up to the opponents and kill them without them ever realizing it. Is Saka going to be alright? Suki asked, feeling very worried about Saka now. I guess it all depends on whether that Suigetsu kid is a master of silent killing or not. We've seen that technique before, Azula commented as her eye was locked on the mist, before glaring at the section where the Akatsuki members sat. I believe it was that ugly-looking swordsman who used it. You mean Kisame? Jiraiya asked the former princess, to which she nodded. Suigetsu had managed to drink the amount of water needed and was now hunting Saka down. He wasn't a master of silent killing, so his footsteps made noise as he walked slowly through the mist which, in his opinion, made it feel worse. Ha, he's probably pissing himself right about now, he thought with glee. Only hearing footsteps, not knowing where I am. He must be completely and utterly terrified. He soon saw the cloak he wore, standing in the mist. And now, I've gotcha! He swung the Kubikuribocho down, intending to cleave him in two. The blade met no resistance as it met the cloak. It was simply cut in two. But as the remains fell to the ground, there was no blood or even a body. What? He said in surprise. What do you know? That stick did come in handy, Sokka's voice said from inside the mist. Where are you? He demanded, turning to the direction where the voice was coming from. Do you honestly think I'm going to tell you? How did you know I was coming for you? It was painfully obvious. The sound of your feet on the ground was a dead giveaway. You thought I was terrified of that sound, weren't you? The sound of laughter echoed throughout the mist. There are things I'm more afraid of than ominous footsteps in mist, and one of them is a giant owl librarian. The voice came from a different spot in the mist. Come out here! Suigetsu demanded, swinging the sword around. Out where? We're in the middle of a mist. Again, the voice came from a different place. He quickly cancelled the jutsu, letting the mist fade away. The only problem was he still didn't see him. Where the hell are you? He yelled. I'm right behind you, moron. He turned around and looked at his enemy. What he saw was not what he was expecting. Saka stood across from him. He wore his armor that Sifu had changed for him. Strapped to his back was both the sheath for his boomerang and his jien, crisscrossing each other. He didn't wear the helmet. He didn't need to. He had painted his face the same way he did when Zuko had come to the South Pole looking for Aang. While he had looked serious with it on before, seasoned warriors would have been able to tell he didn't have the experience to back up the look. Now he did, and that made the look even more intimidating. Isn't that the stuff he wore back at the South Pole? Aang asked. Yeah, it is, Katara answered. It looks scarier now. Looking at his friend now sent a small chill up the Avatar's spine. Sokka does not look youthful at all, Lee declared. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered. It's not about being youthful, Lee. It's about making your opponent nervous. Very good, Shikamaru, Jiraiya told him. You know, Sokka reminds me of you, just without the laziness. Once they heard those words, everyone started to see the similarities between the two of them. You know, he's got a point, Ino agreed. I wonder who would win in a game of strategy, Choji said. That would be very interesting to find out. It's too troublesome to figure out now, their teammate told the two of them. That's your answer to everything, Kiba objected. But in this case, he would be right, Niji said. Sokka was currently fighting. They couldn't stop the fight to find out if he could match Shikamaru on a shogi board. What I want to know is how he can do that thing with his voice, Toph said. He could throw his voice around like that since we were kids, Katara told her. He often did it to annoy me. It's also why no one wanted to play hide-and-go-seek with him. Is all of that supposed to scare me? Suigetsu asked, trying to act like his entire appearance didn't unnerve him. Sokka didn't say anything. He just looked at him like he was measuring his worth. If you're not going to do anything, then I'll make you do something. He raised the Kubikurabocho above his head. Saka's hand blurred as he threw the boomerang. It sliced through Suigetsu's left arm, turning into a jelly-like substance. The boomerang curved back around and sliced through his right arm, turning it into the same substance. While his opponent screamed in pain, he just caught the boomerang and put it away. "Seems like your arms stay attached even after they've been sliced through," he remarked. "Pity, I guess Naruto's kick was just luck. You think you'll be able to beat me that easily?" Suigetsu screamed as his arms returned to normal. "I don't know." He drew his jien and took a water-bending stance. "Care to find out?" He waited as his opponent charged at him. When the Kubikurabocho was swung at his head, he lifted the jien in a defensive position. The blades met, and in that moment, he pushed the Kubikurabocho up and away, then brought his own sword down in a slice. Suigetsu stepped back and only got his shirt sliced. He turned into a spin and swung his sword at his opponent's side. Saka swung to meet it, blocking the sword with the side of his jien. He quickly leapt onto the Kubikurabocho itself, and slashed at his head. He ducked his head to avoid the slash and jerked the blade down, trying to get Saka fall. His response was to jump off of it in a backflip and land a good distance away from him. Quickly looking down, he noticed that he had landed right next to the club. "Well, that's useful," he remarked. "What is?" Suigetsu asked as he charged forward. "This." He got his foot underneath the club's handle and kicked up in the air, catching it with his free hand. He stood ready, dual-wielding weapons. "Is that supposed to make me nervous?" He swung his blade high, intending to once again to slice him in half. Saka stopped the blade by hitting the tip with the jiens. He took a step forward, swinging the club at Suigetsu's midsection. Instead of hearing the sound of it hitting flesh, it hit water, splashing it all over the place. He pulled the jien away from the Kubikurabocho and stabbed directly at his shoulder. Suigetsu moved his blade in front of him, blocking the thrust. "So, he can hold it in other defensive positions, he just tried not to show it," Saka noted before twisting to the side. Yanking the club out of Suigetsu, he swung at the back of his head. Without even looking back, Suigetsu reached out behind him and grabbed the club. He pulled it around the side, bringing Saka back to his front. Releasing his grip to hold Kubikurabocho with both hands, he tried to stab him through the stomach. However, releasing his hold on the club proved to be a mistake. Saka stopped the sword with the jien, then using the hooked end of the club to take hold of the Kubikurabocho via its hole. Pulling hard, he yanked it out of Suigetsu's hands and sent it flying away in the air. It hit the ground with the tip, causing it to stick to the ground. He tried to stab his opponent in the chest, but Suigetsu avoided it by taking a step to the side. "I need to get Kubikurabocho back," he thought in a panic. He tried running past him. Saka turned low in a half circle, sweeping his foot underneath his feet. He tripped and began to fall. The club hit his back hard. Even though water sprayed everywhere, he could still feel pain. He tried to move, but only succeeded in lifting his hands. That was enough to bring back the mist. Saka jumped back once the mist thickened. He sheathed his jien and placed his club on his side. Grabbing a long cloth from a poku, he wrapped it around his eyes. Then he slammed his foot into the ground before turning around and making himself look vulnerable. Suigetsu didn't know what his opponent was thinking. He was just glad for the opportunity. Immediately, he leapt the Kubikurabocho and swung it towards Saka. The water paragon drew his weapons fast and blocked the strike. Suigetsu was stunned. Then he got mad. "How the hell can you sense me? Your eyes aren't even open!" he yelled. Saka simply ignored him and swung his foot in an attempt to trip him. Suigetsu avoided the attempt and lunged at him swinging. His opponent leaned out of the way, barely avoiding getting stabbed. Katara was surprised. She didn't know that her brother could do that. Then she saw Aang's smile. It was the smile he got when he was happy one of his friends figured something out. "Aang, what did you teach Saka?" she asked. Aang glanced her way. "He asked me how an airbender moves a couple of times. I told him that an airbender would move like a leaf in the wind. Be the leaf, and you'll change your stance and your arms as you feel the flow." Saka apparently took that to heart. That explains why he kept gazing at falling leaves whenever we were in the Earth Kingdom. He would get so focused on it, she had to hit him a couple of times, so he won't zone out. With Aang being the last airbender, it's hard to find anyone who would teach the Paragons some airbending stances, Suki said sadly, to which both Aang and Katara nodded in agreement. Zuko noticed how Sokka would occasionally stomp his feet as he fought. And I guess someone taught him that as well? He said, looking at the Soul Earthbender amongst them. Toph simply raised her hand up. I did recall giving my story to everyone back in the Western Air Temple about how the Badger Moles were the original Earthbenders. There was more to that story than just how I learned to Earthbend. Let me guess, they learned seismic sense as well? Zuko asked. She nodded. Meanwhile, Suigetsu started to swing the Kubikuri Bocho at Sokka wildly, but Sokka didn't react as he had hoped. Instead, he continued to lean this way and that, all the while keeping his feet planted. It was irritating, not to mention grating on his nerves. When was he going to fight back? He got his answer when he swung again. This time, Sokka leapt out of the way. He pulled out a paper orb and a lighter, lighting the fuse. Suigetsu thought it was a bomb, and he was partially right. The bomb landed at his feet, the fuse all but gone. It detonated, releasing a sickly-looking gas upwards. It hadn't been an explosive bomb, or even a smoke bomb. It was a stench bomb, and it was all he could smell. It turned his stomach faster than he could control. It didn't take him long to start vomiting. By the time he was done, he felt a sword's edge at his throat. Sokka held his chin there, breathing shallowly. There was nowhere to run, and he didn't have the strength to fight. The match was over. Genma, his nose pinched to mitigate the stench, raised his hand. The winner of the match is Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe. Suigetsu was carted off so he could be checked on by a medic. Sokka took the polite applause with nods and a smile before leaving. Once he walked into the waiting balcony, Zuko and Akela were there. How did you even have the time to make smoke bombs during our training? Zuko asked him as Akela padded over. Sokka chuckled sheepishly. My dad explained to me about how he made these tangle mines our tribesmen had employed on Fire Nation warships. Since I don't have any access to skunkfish, I had to ask Jiraiya to help me find something that stinks. He suggested either the local animal manure or something called a skunk. That, along with Appa's droppings, worked well with the seaweed he got for me. Impressive. Thanks. I wasn't even sure if it would have worked. In the VIP stand, Mei noticed the Kubikuri Bocho was still lying on the ground. A quick look at the Hokage told her all she needed to know. She beckoned for Ao to retrieve the blade, before turning to Chojuro and whispered something in his ear. Chojuro nodded and joined Ao outside. So, what do we all think? She asked once he was gone. That Suigetsu kid wasn't bad with the Kubikuri Bocho, Anoki commented. And he used the Mizudepo no Jutsu quite well. But that was all he was good with, Gaara objected. Take away those and he didn't have much to use in a fight. His temper also led him into trouble, the Tsuchikage agreed. Speaking of which, what do we think of Saka? Tsunade asked. The kid has been trained by a master, there is no doubt. That's why he commanded the bout, Killer Bee stated. Mei agreed with the sentiment. He showed tactical thinking when he first attacked. He was testing how his opponent would defend, she noted. It's a shame he's not a shinobi. I would have said he earned the right for Chunin rank. Yes, the Hozuki boy was bad and the foreigner was surprisingly good, they said rudely. Let's move on. Hey brother, what's put you in a foul mood? You're acting really rude, B asked him. Damn it, B. Stop it with the rapping. Or do you want the iron claw? He asked, raising his left hand. Alright, the next match will be Zuko versus Karen, Genma called out. Will the two candidates come down? Karen looked over at Zuko. She had also thought that the matches with the foreigners would be a walk in the park. But after watching Suigetsu's match, she wasn't so sure. The foreigner wasn't even one of those benders she had been informed about, but her opponent was one. She turned to look at said opponent. He was flexing his fingers, stretching them to the limits, and curling them back. Every time he stretched them, a small flame would appear in his hands. Every time he curled them back, the flames would disappear. It was a little unnerving to watch someone be able to use fire so easily without any hand seals whatsoever. What also unnerved her was the fact she couldn't sense any chakra from him, or his friend. He turned his gaze on her, and she stiffened. His golden eyes seemed to look right through her. They showed nothing, except someone who would not be holding back in any way. The glare on his face and the scar just helped enforce the point. However, she then saw something that terrified her to the bone. Encircling him protectively was a dragon the color of fire. Its bright blue eyes looked at her and promised something worse than death. As he was about to make his way to the stairs, she turned to the railing. Proctor, I forfeit, she declared in a loud voice. I withdraw from the match. This got a lot of booing from the audience. Zuko just walked back over to Saka and Akela. Told you she'd quit, Saka said with a grin. Yeah, you were right. I'm glad I didn't bet money on like Naruto and Jiraiya, he replied. Karen heard them, saw the laugh they shared. They were betting on whether or not I would forfeit. She asked herself in furious silence. Due to Karen's forfeit, Zuko wins by default, Genma announced to the arena, getting more boos. The next match will be between Naruto Uzumaki and Yugo. That stopped the booing. Would the two candidates come down? Yugo leapt over the railing and landed on the arena ground. Everyone began to pay closer attention. This was one of the matches they had actually come to see. They wanted to see Naruto in action. However, they still didn't know where he was. Well, where is he? Asked A. Will he show? Mei asked Tsunade. He will be here, Gaara told her. You seem awfully confident about that, Kazekage, Inoki said. I know him well enough. He will be here. You would be right, Gaara, Jiraiya said to him, except for one thing. And what would that be? He's already here. The Toad Sage looked up at the ceiling. Right, Naruto? Yeah, I hear ya, Naruto's voice spoke from above. They heard the sound of feet walking on roof tiles. You know you owe me 20, right? He frowned but in good humor. I'm well aware of that. Now get your ass down there, he ordered. All they saw was a blur leaping down from the roof. Jiraiya, how long was he there? Tsunade asked him. About 2 hours before the exam started. Why did no one see him? Matsuri asked. He was counting on the fact that no one really bothers to look up. Naruto made his way down to the ground in easy jumps. In seconds he was facing Yugo. I'm here, he told Genma. So you are, he replied, looking the blonde over. The zipper on the jumpsuit was pulled down and stopped when it was at his waist. He wore a black sleeveless shirt underneath the jacket and had bandaged his left arm, on the bicep and on the forearm. His jian was slung across his back in its usual manner. All in all, it made him look a little intimidating. If the both of you are ready, then let the match begin, Genma declared, stepping back. The two stared at each other. Are you going to attack? Or are you just going to stand there? Naruto asked as he pulled out a cigarette and lit it. I do not wish to fight you, Yugo replied, but his body language said different. It screamed how much it wanted to attack. Tough shit, now attack me, the blonde ordered him. I will not. You're afraid of me, aren't you? Yes. Fine, I'll give you a handicap. He put his hands in his pockets. I'll just use my feet. That seem fair to you? He asked his opponent. I still won't fight you. In that case, just stand still. He charged forward and kicked his face. Yugo caught it effortlessly, but it left him open. Naruto took that chance to kick his midsection. He grunted in pain and let go of the foot, clutching his midsection. Please don't make me do this, he begged. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't aware you had a choice, slave. He spat out the last word like it disgusted him. What? You are a slave. You do not the option of choosing something. A man chooses but a slave obeys. Don't call me that, he said. Call you what? Don't call you a slave? Naruto barked a harsh laugh. You are a slave. You have never chosen. You have only obeyed. I am not a slave. He screamed as he charged forward, his skin turning gray and his right arm turning into larger form of itself. What the hell is that Baka thinking? Kiba demanded. He's gonna get pounded into the ground now. And here he had thought that Naruto had gotten smarter over the years. You doubt my ability to train somebody? Jiraiya asked in a faux-hurt tone. He knows what he's doing. But Lord Jiraiya, you saw the same thing we did, Hinata said. What'll happen if Naruto gets hit by that arm? I'll punish him later for getting hit, he replied with a completely straight face. Yugo kept swinging his arm, trying hit to Naruto. But all he did in response was either dodge or use a kick to knock his arm aside. I'm disappointed, Yugo, he said. You say you aren't a slave and yet here you are, obeying. I don't take orders. His opponent shouted, more of his skin turning gray. Oh really, you are certain of that? He leaned back to avoid a punch that would have knocked his head off. You're following orders right now. No, I'm not. Of course you are. Your master has ordered you to kill me, and your rage is ordering you to rip me to bloody pieces. Those are orders and you obey them. You are a slave. Yugo roared in anger and swung another punch at him. He dodged effortlessly. And you continue to disappoint me. I am not a slave. I chose to hide myself from everyone. I chose to lock myself away. No, you obeyed what your fears whispered in your ear. That is why you locked yourself away. You're lying. The grotesque arm shrunk back down to a normal size. It remained gray, but instead, an axe grew out of his forearm. The same thing happened on his other arm as well. What do you know? You're not just a slave, you're a monster too, Naruto said, simultaneously making it sound like what he saw was something amazing and disgusting. Die! He screamed. I don't believe what my eyes do see. This is something new for the killer bee, B stated as he watched what happened on the field. I must agree with your brother, Lord Rakage, May told him. She had never seen someone like that before. What is he? Gaara wondered aloud. Everyone was wondering that as well, except for the Tsuchikage. It's been a while since I've seen a member of that clan, Inoki said. What are you talking about, old man? Kuratsuchi asked her grandfather, her tone annoyed but also curious. I have fought many people in my life who hail from the same clan as that boy, he told her. They could all do the same things as he can, but they are also struck with the same infection. They are sometimes struck with bloodlust and go berserk. I had to kill more than I would want to count that had destroyed entire villages, and I've always lost men every time it happened. So, you've killed every member of this clan? He looked at her. Obviously not, a few must have gone into hiding. What's the name of this clan? Asked A. I didn't have time to ask. I was always a little busy trying to make sure my shinobi didn't die. Yugo kept swinging his axes at his target, but he kept missing. Naruto did not try to attack at all, nor did he remove his hands from his pockets. He would always step back, evaded or use his legs to kick the attacks away. As he attacked, he got angrier and angrier. More of his skin turned dark, and when it finally came to his eyes, they became yellow and black. He kept on attacking, but he didn't get anything out of it. The longer I look at you, the more I see the slave, Naruto told him coldly. And the more disgusted I am. Shut up! He roared. Why should I? Do you hate listening to the truth so much? His skin had turned completely dark. The nails on his fingers sharpened themselves. His forehead and the sides of his face had turned into hard bone, and a black ran down from his forehead to the end of his nose. Multiple things began to emerge from his back. The cloak he wore hindered it, so he cast it off. The blue shirt he wore was torn to rags as multiple pipes spewed churka from them. I'm gonna kill ya! He declared with maniacal laughter. Try if you can, slave, Naruto simply replied. Laughing like a crazed man about to die, he charged forward, faster than before. He shot towards Naruto, axes at the ready. He was faster than before, but Naruto was still able to dodge them. He stopped, immediately turned around and leapt for his back. Naruto swung around, throwing a roundhouse kick at the arms. Instead, the hands caught the leg and slammed it down, bringing Naruto with it. He pulled his hands out and reached for the ground. Once he had a grip, he yanked his foot free and rolled forward. Yugo swung his axes down, trying to cleave him in half. He continued rolling to avoid them. He got away from the axes before he was even hurt. He leapt out of the roll and turned back around to face Yugo, his hands back in the pockets. Is that all? He asked. Not even close. Yugo charged forward again, only to stumble and fall when he felt the same immense killing intent from before coming from the blonde. Do you think this will stop me? I'm gonna to get back up and then I'm gonna kill ya, he declared, looking him in the eye. That will depend, Naruto replied. Depend on what? He fought to stand up, but he wasn't winning. Are you going to kill me as a man, or as a slave? What do you mean? Killing is killing. Are you a man or are you a slave, Yugo? The blonde asked him, still keeping him pinned with the killing intent. I am not a slave, he answered, his voice switching back and forth between the crazed tone and his normal one. But are you a man? No, I'm a monster. Answer the question, Yugo. Naruto shouted. Are you a man or are you a slave? Neither. He screamed back. Wrong. The fire paragon bellowed. A man chooses, but a slave obeys. Which one are you? I don't know. Then decide. Will you submit to your feelings of rage and follow your master's orders? Or will you choose to stop fighting? I didn't want to fight in the first place. But you still would have. You were going to follow your master's orders to kill me. You did not realize that you were a slave. He walked closer to him, still using the killing intent. A man chooses, but a slave obeys. Will you choose or will you obey? He grabbed Yugo by the shirt, lifting him up until they were face to face. Are you a man or a slave? He roared right in his face. I'm a man. Yugo roared back in his normal voice. Then prove it. Naruto released his grip and stepped back, the killing intent vanishing. If you are a man, choose to quell your rage. He stayed there on his knees, concentrating. The pipes and axes slowly began to shrink back into his body. Every couple of seconds, it looked like they were struggling to stay out. Eventually, they disappeared into his body. Then his skin began to change back. The dark skin would sometimes struggle to stay in place, but it would be pushed back. In the end, Yugo sat on his knees, in a tattered shirt and ragged shorts. There was no dark skin showing, his arms did not hold any axes, and he did not wear a crazed grin. Well? What are you? Naruto asked him. He stood up on shaky legs. I am a man, not a slave, he answered in a clear voice. I do not obey, I choose. And I choose to forfeit. Oh no, we cannot have that, Yugo, a voice said as someone landed next to him. It was a man with ash-gray hair and glasses covering onyx eyes. Both his pants and his shirt were purple while his undershirt was white. He wore a white cloth waistband and blue sandals as well as a shuriken holster on his right leg. You have your orders. Kill Naruto Uzumaki. He shook his head. I won't do it, Kabuto. I am not a slave. You see, that's where you're wrong. You are a slave. And if you won't obey, then you'll be forced to obey. He quickly pulled out a syringe and aimed it to plunge it into Yugo's neck. It was knocked out of his hand by a shuriken and fell to the ground, the glass shattering on impact. While surprised, he was still aware enough to jump back and avoid a kick. You've grown up, Naruto. You're still the same, Kabuto, a complete smug, insufferable asshole, Naruto replied. He grabbed Yugo and pushed over to the proctor. Get him out of here, Gunma. Gunma nodded and took hold of Yugo before leaping away. As he leapt away, Zuko, Saka and Akela leapt into the arena and ran to back Naruto up. You brought friends, Kabuto noted. And you brought none. Who is this man? Zuko asked Naruto. This is Kabuto Yakushi, second in command to Orochimaru, the leader of Otogekure and traitor to Konoha, he introduced the man standing before them. It's a pleasure to meet you all, Kabuto gave them a mocking half-bow. Speaking of the bastard, where is he? I am right here, Naruto, a sinister voice spoke in the air. Then, out of the ground, a man appeared. He slowly rose up until he stood next to Kabuto. Both Saka and Zuko recoiled slightly when they saw him. His skin was very pale, almost to the point of pasty. His waist-length hair was black. His eyes were amber and had slits in his pupils. Purple markings surrounded his eyes. He wore black pants and a black polo neck with a gray garb over it. Around his waist was a thick, purple rope belt that was tied off in the back. He wore blue tomo-shaped earrings on his ears with a whimsical, if not a little sinister, smile on his face. This guy is giving me the creeps just by looking at him, Saka thought to himself. He wasn't the only one who thought that. Who would have thought he'd show up? Kisame asked. It's his home village and the Kyubi Jinchuriki is back. I guess he was interested too, Deidara said. Whoa, is that really Orochimaru? Toby asked, sounding both surprised and amazed. Yeah, that's the pasty bastard all right, Haiden answered. I still want to send him to Lord Jashin. What he tries to do is blasphemy. You can't attack him, Haiden, Kakuzu told him. You think I don't know that? Stop, Conan ordered them. We will do nothing. We are simply here to observe, nothing more. Right now, we're under diplomatic immunity. If we lose that, then the 5 Kages will have an excuse to attack us. Is that understood? Yes, they all answered. What in the hell? Asked A, completely surprised by the fact. Orochimaru's here? We can see him quite well, Mei remarked with a little sarcasm. Lady Tsunade, what are you going to do? Gaara asked the Hokage. She simply raised her hand and touched the wireless radio she wore around her neck. Activate, she ordered. So, you've finally shown yourself. Naruto said, his tone even and controlled. He had been waiting 3 years for a chance like this to show itself. But he had to stay in control to take advantage of it. I think I should be the one saying that, Orochimaru replied. You disappeared for 3 years and now, all of a sudden you're back. It was an opportunity one couldn't resist. To capture and experiment on me to see what I could do and if you could copy my abilities? Precisely, not to mention your new friends as well, he answered with a sadistic grin, making Zuko, Saka, and even Akela shudder. I take it you all were brought in kicking and screaming? More like knocked out, the blonde replied. I was planning on getting us all out, but they offered me a deal sweet enough to make me stay. And what was that? The chance to kill you, he answered with a straight face. A dark chuckle escaped the pale man's lips. Amusing, Naruto, very amusing, he said, his grin turning amused. I would offer you the chance to try, but I and my subordinates must leave now. A smirk appeared on his face at those words. You haven't noticed yet, have you? Noticed what? Did you really think your former teammates wouldn't know what you were planning? They knew what you were going to do long beforehand and prepared accordingly. He pulled out a shuriken and threw it up into the air. Once it reached a certain point above the arena, it hit a wall of energy. As the energy rippled, revealing the dome over the arena, the shuriken fell back down to the ground. A simple cage seal reinforced 5 times over, he stated. There's no way you'll be able to get out easily. Oh, and by the way, he pointed up to the waiting balcony. I don't think your subordinates will be joining you. Orochimaru looked at the balcony, letting nothing show on his face. He knew the cage seal enclosed a certain area, both in the air and underground. If you were powerful enough and knew what to do, it was very easy to break the seal. But when the seal was reinforced, its strength and resilience grew. The more reinforced it was, the more it grew and the harder it was to break it. He also knew that if Karen was not in the waiting balcony, then both she and Suigetsu had been taken, along with Yugo. But he wasn't annoyed, angry, or even embarrassed. If anything, he looked interested. I guess I really should have known better, he admitted as he turned to look up at the Kage box. Well played, Tsunade, Jiraiya, he called up to his old teammates with a mocking salute. He turned his attention back down to Naruto. I guess I can entertain you after all, Naruto. A deal's a deal, right? He flashed through 2 hand seals. Sanaijishu, hidden shadow snake hands. He held out his right hand in a punching motion as snakes emerged from the sleeve and flew towards their enemies. Back up, Naruto told the others. They jumped away as the snakes smashed into the ground where they just were. They landed further away from the two. The 2 groups stood on different sides of the arena, staring each other in the eye. Orochimaru hadn't lost his grin. If I am going to fight you, then I might as well make it interesting. I was saving this one for a special occasion, and I guess this would be it. He looked over at Kabuto. Do it. Yes, Lord Orochimaru. He flashed those hand seals at an incredible pace, and slammed his hands into the ground. Kuchios, Edo Tensei, summoning, impure world reincarnation. A coffin rose up out of the ground and stood in front of him. Are you ready to face your opponent, Naruto? He asked the blonde. I can almost guarantee you won't be able to fight this person. The coffin lid fell down to the ground and the person inside stepped out. While Saka and Zuko were confused about who it was, Naruto kept a straight face. Inside his mind was a different story. He didn't, the Kyuubi said in shock. He knew that his Jinchuriki and his teammates had been briefed on the technique. But the person in front of them was not someone the fox was expecting. Apparently he did, Naruto answered, a little surprised. I didn't think he'd be that heartless, Kisame admitted as he looked down at the person standing in front of Orochimaru and Kabuto. Huh! Who is that? Tobi asked curiously. That's someone who is well known in this village, Kakuza answered. When she was alive, the bounty on her head was fairly impressive. That's all you can think about, Money, Haiden remarked. What do you think about this, Itachi HM? Deidara asked him. When he didn't answer, they all looked at him. He was visibly angry, something they thought he would never show on his face, and trembling with fury. How dare he do that? He asked with a growl. Who is that person? Mei asked. I don't know, Gaara answered. Is that who I think it is? Anoki asked Tsunade. She didn't answer, she didn't have to. The fact that both she and Jiraiya looked absolutely dangerous, and leaking large amount of killing intent was enough of an answer. Damn you, Orochimaru! Jiraiya roared from the railing. Have you no shame? Everyone was surprised at his sudden fury. Lord Jiraiya, why are you so angry? Hinata asked. Yeah, just who is that person? Aang asked as well. Is she someone important? Suki asked. His fury was still radiating as he looked at them. He didn't just summon anyone back from the dead. He summoned Kushina Uzumaki. Kushina Uzumaki? Kiba repeated. Is she from the same clan as Naruto? She's his mother. Chapter 40, Dueling and Leaving. Location, Konoha. As most of the crowd in the stands looked down at the field, those who knew the person Kabuto had summoned were in a rage. How can he be that heartless? Tsunade demanded. We knew he would use the Edo Tensei. We just didn't know who he would use, Jiraiya said. We didn't know who he would summon. I must admit, it was a good move on Orochimaru's part, Anoki said with a smirk. It was quite clever too. Killer Bee turned a scowl on him. That ain't right, old man. You say that again, I'll bust your head open like an egg going to the pan, he threatened. Raikage, restrain your brother. I am appalled as well, but I'm willing to admit the brilliance of what he did. The Tsuchikage spoke with an indifferent tone, which only made Bee even angrier. Bee, calm down, A ordered his brother. I can't calm down, brother, the man protested. For doing something like that, I want to tear that snake another. You're not the only one, Bee. Now calm down. Just who the hell is that woman? Kankuro asked, looking at everyone else there. Why is she making you all so pissed off? Be respectful. The Raikage snapped. That is Kushina Uzumaki. Well, who is Kushina Uzumaki? Somebody please, give me a straight answer. She was the wife of the Yondaime Hokage, Baki answered his student's question. She died with him on the 10th of October, the day Naruto Uzumaki was born. When he heard that little tidbit of information, he connected the dots and realized what that meant. Oh fuck. Those two words summed up the entire situation perfectly. That's his mother? Katara repeated, horrified as she looked down at the dead woman. That's what I just said, isn't it? Jiraiya replied, still glaring daggers at his former teammate. That bastard! Roared an outraged Kiba. Azula sat in silence, looking down at the woman standing in front of the coffin. She's the same woman I met in my dreams after we had gotten out of the swamp, she thought. She really was his mother. How can he do something like that? Hinata asked. Very easily, it appears, Shino told her. While he was just angry as the rest of them, he remained in control of himself. This is entirely unyouthful, Lee declared. This is what Orochimaru does, Neji told his teammate, cold fury lacing his voice. Is there any way for us to down to the field? Suki asked the shinobi beside her. They had to get down to the field and help their friends. If there was, I would already be down there, Jiraiya told her. Well, Naruto, Orochimaru said with gleeful cruelty. How does it feel, knowing you'll have to fight your mother? His mother! Repeated both Zuko and Saka in shock and horror when they heard those words. But once they took a closer look, they could see some of the resemblances between the two of them. Naruto, is that really you? Kushina finally spoke, looking at her son. Yes, it is, Kushina, Orochimaru told her. That's your son over there. I thought I'd give the two of you time to get to know each other. She turned to cast an angry and furious look at him. You bastard, you're going to have the two of us fight. He wasn't fazed by it. Well, of course, why else would you be here if not to be forced to kill your own son? You sick freak! Saka yelled when he heard that. You have no honor, Zuko said with a hard voice. The man was truly nothing but the lowest kind of scum there was. He had thought his father had been bad, but at least he had standards. There's no need to be rude, you two, Kabuto told them with a condescending smile. But please don't interrupt, this is something that is none of your concern. The same goes for you, Kabuto, Naruto finally spoke out. So shut up. The man looked like he had been smacked across the face at those words. You are as brash as ever, Naruto, Orochimaru noted. I guess 3 years away has done little to cool your temper. Could he be any more wrong? The Kyuubi asked. Kushina thought something different. 3 years? What do you mean, Orochimaru? Oh, you didn't know? He asked for the sake of cruelty. Your dear son is home in Konoha for the first time in 3 years, after running away from it. He had gotten tired of how the village treated him, and when they decided to banish him for doing what he was ordered, he left. He gave up on being a shinobi. Aren't you proud of him? Shut up. You shut up. You're lying. Why don't you ask him yourself? She looked over at her son. It's not true. Please tell me it's not true. Why would you leave the village, Naruto? He didn't answer her. It was answer enough, and everyone could see her despair. She was about to speak when Orochimaru pulled out a kunai with a red talisman and inserted it into her head. That's enough talking, he said. As he withdrew his hand, steam began to hiss and rise from her body. The cracks in her skin disappeared and her skin returned to its original tone. When the steam had dissipated, she looked like she was alive again. Her clothes, a dark short-sleeved shirt with tight pants stopping beneath her knees with a shuriken holster on her right leg and the Konoha flak jacket, looked like they were fresh cleaned. Her long, red hair had been tied into a ponytail. The only problem was that her eyes held no life in them, they were completely dead. Well, Naruto? Are you ready to fight against your mother? Kabuto asked the blonde with a smug look. They knew he could not and would not refuse. Naruto took one last drag of the cigarette he had in his mouth, which he had been working on since his fight with Yugo. He blew the smoke, then took the cigarette out and looked at it. He was quiet as he slowly examined what remained of the cancer stick. He finally dropped it to the ground and snuffed it out with his foot. Saka, Zuko, Akela, he said aloud. You guys fight her. It was safe to assume that almost everyone there was not expecting that response. Are you sure? Zuko asked him. He knew this was something the blonde would say, but he wanted to be certain. Yes. I am. But this is your mother, Naruto, Saka said. He looked at him. She might be my mother, Saka. But I don't know her. Besides, you'll have a better chance of beating her. He walked past them over to the tree and sat down against the trunk. Have fun. That was unexpected, Inoki said. He would have thought that the blonde would leap directly into combat. But it had been quite the opposite. No, that went as expected, Gaara replied. Oh? Do you know something we don't, Lord Kazekage? I stayed with Naruto during my vacation, the redhead told the old man. Orochimaru still expected him to be hot-headed and would charge into things head first. But he's changed. He's able to stay calm and make the right decision. So Orochimaru's plan just about blew up in his face? May asked for clarification. Yes. Serves that smug snake bastard right, growled A. Huh, I didn't think he'd do that, Haiden said. He certainly is different, Deidara stated. I thought he'd charge right and start attacking. He would have, if it was 3 years ago, Kisame told him. Hey Itachi, why were you so angry earlier? Tobi asked the Uchiha, who looked like he had managed to calm down. You looked like you were going to attack Orochimaru yourself. Does that woman mean something to you? Kakaza asked. Itachi stayed silent for a couple of seconds before finally speaking. There are few shinobi that have my respect. Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze were two of them. They always believed in the village and protected it from danger until their last breath. For Orochimaru to have her summoned from the dead to use her to kill her own son is insulting. Then it's a good thing he said no, Kisame remarked. Although isn't it a little hypocritical for you to talk about respecting someone who defended the village? Enough, Kisame, Conan said. Who Itachi respects is his choice. I did not expect this, Orochimaru thought. He will not fight her, nor will he try to attack me now. This might complicate things. But no matter, once Kushina kills his friends, he'll have no choice but to attack. He smirked as he looked at Kushina's opponents. Sending your friends to the slaughter, Naruto? Kabuto asked, acting confidently once he saw the smirk on Orochimaru's face. I didn't realize you'd become so heartless. It's only a slaughter if we die, Saka retorted as he drew his jien and unhooked his club. Akela stood ready at his side, teeth bared. Zuko drew his swords as well. Is that so? Then perhaps we should send you along more quickly. He pulled out a scroll and placed it on the ground. He opened it and folded his hands into a hand seal. He muttered a kai before slapping his hand down on the scroll. A cloud of smoke sprouted from the paper, and when it dissipated, a katana lay there. He picked it up and held out for Kushina. She took it with no hesitation. This just got more difficult, Jiraiya said with a grimace once he saw the sword. What do you mean, Lord Jiraiya? Tenten asked. Is that katana special somehow? No, but when Kushina wielded a blade when she was alive, she became much more difficult to beat. A sarcastic chuckle escaped his lips. I guess it was to be expected from the niece of the Ken no Ryushu, Lord of Swords. Wait, Kenji Uzumaki was her uncle? Katara asked him, completely surprised by his words. Yep, she was. She was almost as good as he was. You're right, Toph said. This did just get more complicated. They were silent until Hinata noticed Kiba acting strange. What's the matter, Kiba? She asked him. How can he act like that? How can he act like she doesn't matter to him? He asked in outrage. She's his mother, Kami, take it. He was an Inuzuka. To him, your family was your pack. You never turn your back on your pack. It's because she's his mother that he's acting like this, Jiraiya told him. Well, isn't there anything to reverse whatever it is that's keeping her under the control of the Edo Tensei? Niji asked. Jiraiya shook his head. Not that I know of, although the only method that I remember Kakashi or Asuma explaining to me was when Konoha was invaded. The late Sandaime used the Shiki Fujin on the reanimated corpses of the first two Hokages. I guess you have a point, Choji said, understanding what Jiraiya was saying. Still, I'd thought Naruto would completely angry right now. Instead, he's just calm. Azula shook his head. You're wrong, he's not calm at all. He's furious. How can you tell? Shikamaru asked. Lesson number 8, your emotions do not control you, you control them, she recited. He's forcing himself to be calm right now. But once he's done, whoever's going to be on the receiving end of his fury will probably deserve it. They stood in silence as they faced each other, 3-1. Orochimaru and Kabuto kept back, giving the combatants more room. Naruto hadn't moved from where he sat. Saka made the first move. He charged straight at Kushina, swinging the sharp end of the club at the shoulder of her sword arm. If I can dislocate her shoulder, she won't be able to use it as effectively, he thought. As the club was about to hit, she moved. She swung the katana up, catching the club in its hook. She continued the swing and yanked the club of his hands, sending it flying. He plunged his jien into her stomach, but she caught it with her own sword. The swing had turned down so smoothly, no one had seen it turned. That was when Zuko moved in. He charged and leapt high into the air. He swung his swords downwards right at her head. With a quick glance upwards, she kicked Saka away and brought her sword up in a defensive position. The blades clanged against each other as Zuko landed. Akela charged in and went for the legs. She sidestepped and pushed his swords away. Not stopping, she slashed at Akela, forcing him to leap away. She took the opportunity to attack Zuko. The blades clashed again, but this time, Zuko was pushed back. She took that opportunity to form a hand seal. Katan, Goryoka no Jutsu, Fire Style, Great Fire Dragon Jutsu. She cried, spewing out a giant dragon head made of fire. It flew at Zuko, intending to burn him to a crisp. However, neither Orochimaru nor Kabuto were aware of what Zuko could do. He stood his ground and sliced the head in two using his Dao swords. He then bent the halves into two streams of fire and sent them back at her, intertwining them as they went. She rolled out of the way of the two streams. Akela saw an opportunity. He lunged forward and grabbed her leg, tearing it off just below the knee. He tossed the leg away and moved back. Nice job, Akela, Saka told him. That should keep her down. Are you sure of that? Orochimaru asked them with an amused smile. The torn leg broke apart, turning into dust and ash. The stuff flew over to the body. Saka and Zuko watched in horror as the leg was literally remade in front of their eyes. Once the damage was fixed, she stood back up. You've got to be kidding, Zuko said in disbelief. Saka couldn't answer due to the fact she suddenly charged them. Shinken, vacuum sword! A gust of wind sprang from the slash she swung and flew towards them. They leapt to avoid it, and came back together to attack her. Saka swung high while Zuko swung low. She blocked both strikes with ease. She pushed the sword up, bringing theirs up along with, and then drew it back. She swung down, aiming for them both. Though they stepped back, she still managed to nick their sides. Rather than press her advantage, she lowered her sword and sheathed it. Both Zuko and Saka were confused. What is she doing? Zuko asked. They got their answer when she rushed them at a blindingly fast pace. She drew her katana and slashed at them in the same motion. It was only due to the hellish month of training Jiraiya put them through that they were able to block the slash. Had they tried to stop her a second later, they would have been cut in half. All four swords held together in a deadlock. Zuko and Sokka pushed against with all their might, but she was unyielding. Akela lunged for her. He leapt over the blades and slammed into her chest, sending both to the ground. He tried to tear out her throat out, but she wrapped her legs around him and twisted, slamming him to the ground. She let go, stood back up and then flashed those hand seals. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, Fire Style, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. She spewed several small fireballs at the wolf. It never touched him. Zuko bent the fire towards himself, and onto his swords. He then swung them back at her, bending the fire into arcs. She flipped over them, dodging effortlessly. When she landed, Sokka was there. He swung his Jien at her head, but she blocked it effortlessly. Knocking the Jien aside, she tried to slice him from shoulder to hip. He blocked her and hooked his leg behind hers, tripping her. However, as she fell, she pulled herself into backflip. She landed back on her feet, only to duck as Sokka threw his boomerang at her head. As it flew over her head, she stood back up and attacked him. She aimed a thrust at his stomach, but he parried and cut her side. He tried to slice off her legs, but she swatted the Jien away. Before she could attack again, the boomerang came back and sliced through her left shoulder. Sokka caught the boomerang as her entire left arm just fell to the ground. Sokka, hit the ground, ordered Zuko. He did so, giving the Fire Nation Prince a clear shot of Kushina. While Sokka had been attacking, he had been preparing and now, he was ready. He opened his mouth and breathed lightning, which he directed straight at her heart. She didn't react in time and the lightning hit her in full force. She flew back a couple of feet and fell to the ground when the lightning stopped. There was a hole where her heart had been, it had been a through and through. Please tell me that was enough, Sokka said as he stood back up. But what he was asking for wouldn't happen. Ash and dust began to fill up the hole and also began to reattach the arm. When the hole was filled and the arm was back in place, she stood back up. This is getting annoying. Will the two of you stop playing around? Naruto asked from where he sat. Just finish her off already. Oh? You're sure your friends can beat her? Kabuto asked him before laughing. How amusing that you think they have a chance. Your friends are weaklings. They couldn't even possibly compare to Kushina, who became famous during the Third Shinobi World War. Orochimaru, why is your donkey braying? The blonde asked the snake sage, completely ignoring the man who spoke. It's annoying everybody here. A donkey, Orochimaru repeated with a tone of curiosity. He sounds like an ass. The answer amused Orochimaru and offended Kabuto, not that he cared. He turned his attention back to his teammates. Guys, finish it. They nodded in agreement and turned to face Kushina. It was time to bring out what they learned. Flashback, they all sat around the fire, eating their dinner. 3 of them were battered but their bruises didn't sting so much. Today was decent, Jiraiya told them, looking at them through the fire. You did well in some places, but not as well in others. And that's why you're training us, Naruto replied as he wolfed down his meat. Indeed. That reminds me. He turned to the other 2 humans there. Sokka, Zuko, did the 2 of you learn from the same teacher when it came to the sword? What makes you say that? Zuko asked back. We wield different kinds of swords. Yes, but both of you take the same basic stance, and some of your forms look similar too. Well, I don't know about Sokka, but I learned from Piandao. Wait, Piandao? Sokka repeated. I learned from him as well. That was surprising news to learn. That answers the question, Jiraiya said to himself before returning his attention to them. May I see your swords? The 2 of them looked at him like he was crazy. You want to what? Zuko asked. I wish to examine them. You're not going to do anything to them? Sokka asked. He liked his Jien very much. He didn't want to see it destroyed. No. You're not gonna steal them and hide them from us? Why would I do that? The Toad Sage asked him, sounding completely mystified. I don't know. It felt like something someone would do to keep his sword away from him. I promised to do nothing but examine them. They shared a look with each other before cautiously handing their swords over to him. He took them and drew them from their scabbards. He looked them over until his eyes settled the same inscription on the different swords. What is it? Naruto asked him. How does your master know this phrase? He asked Sokka and Zuko, pointing to the inscription on Sokka's Jien. He said that he learned it from his master, Zuko answered. Who was his master? I don't know. I never asked. I think it was a guy named Kenji Uzumaki, Saka told him. That sounded like it was the right name to the tribesman. It must have been the correct name because it got Jiraiya's attention instantly. What? Are you sure of that? Yeah, I'm sure. People called him the Ken no Ryushu, right? Yeah, that's right. He sheathed the swords and handed them back. So, the rumors were true after all, he mused to himself. What rumors? Zuko asked him. There were rumors that Kenji Uzumaki had trained a student in both swordsmanship and in forging, teaching him the most kept secret of the Uzumaki, he explained. Apparently, his clan raised a fuss over it due to the face he hadn't trained a clan member or even a shinobi. And how do you know all this? Naruto asked him, curious about it all. Later in his life, he also trained his niece, Kusha Uzumaki. My mother? The blonde asked after a moment of stunned silence. Yes, he answered. The Kyuubi must have told him, he thought to himself. What does this have to do with our swords? Zuko asked, looking down at his Dao swords. These aren't just swords, they're Zanpakutos. A Zanpakuto? Repeated Sokka. Are you sure? Yes. Kushina told me that the Uzumaki clan was the best in Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu. But their true skill was in the art of forging. If that's true, why aren't there Zanpakutos by the dozen? The tribesman asked. He would have thought that would be the case if what the old shinobi was saying was true. Firstly, the secret to creating them was closely guarded. Only one person in the clan knew the secret, and they would only tell it to their student when they were ready, Jiraiya explained. The second reason was that being the holder of the secret meant you had to be a good judge of character. If you felt that person was worthy enough, you could forge a Zanpakuto. According to Kushina, no one in the history of the Uzumaki clan was worthy enough to have a Zanpakuto. The third reason was because Yuzushiogakure was destroyed. Yuzushiogakure? Repeated Naruto. It was the shinobi village of the Uzumaki clan, in the land of whirlpools, he told the blonde quietly. Its destruction sparked the Third Great Shinobi War. For a couple of seconds, all they heard was the fire crackle. Who destroyed it? We don't know, he answered. No one ever came forward and announced it. That was partly why the war happened. What about the clan? If there were still members of his clan grouped together, then maybe he could find them or something. Most of them were killed in the attack, the rest scattered to the four winds. I'm sorry. Listening to those words made his small hope of finding fellow clansmen disappear. Don't apologize, you didn't attack them, he told Jiraiya. The Toad Sage turned his attention to Sokka. How is it you know what a Zanpakuto is? Sifu told me when I found the tomb, the tribesman said in reply. Who is Sifu? He didn't know this person, and as a shinobi, it was in his best interests to know people. Don't worry, I know him. We can trust what he says, Naruto told him. What do you mean tomb? He asked Sokka. You know how Sifu was the last master of the first paragons? The blonde nodded. Well, their master before him was the one who taught them how to make Zanpakutos. According to Sifu, he only taught how to do it to 5 people, 4 of which were the first paragons. Who was the 5th? Zuko asked. He didn't know, only that it was someone he taught long before the first paragons. So that's how they knew the secret, Jiraiya muttered to himself when he heard those words. What are you talking about? Naruto asked, looking at the Toad Sage. Do you know the legend of the Sage of the Six Paths? Yeah, I actually paid attention that day in class. He always paid attention when it came time for a story. Whether it was history or not didn't matter. Do you remember the part about his sons? Yeah, the eldest felt cheated and challenged the youngest to a fight. Their fight would continue through the generations as the descendants of the elder became the Uchiha, and the descendants of the younger became the Senju, he recited. Did they also tell you that the Uzumaki are distantly related to the Senju? Jiraiya asked him. They left that part out. Where are you going with this? If the Uzumaki are descended from the Sage of the Six Paths, and they knew how to create a Zanpakuto. Oh, I get it, the blonde said, realizing where the old shinobi was going with this conversation and seeing the point. Do you mind telling us what in the name of Agni you are talking about? Zuko asked the two of them. Both he and Sokka were completely confused by what they were saying. We know who the 5th person was, that's all, Naruto replied shortly. But the main question is how you learned their names? Jiraiya asked both Saka and Zuko, looking them straight in the eye. They have names? Saka asked in confusion. He just thought it was a sword. It didn't need a name, did it? From what Kushina told me and what I could research, each Sanpakuto has a spirit, and the spirit has a name. Both Saka and Zuko remembered the dreams they had. That must have been the spirit, they thought to themselves. So how do we find out their names? Zuko asked aloud. They have to tell you themselves, Jiraiya told him. But how do we hear them? I'm not sure, he admitted. Kushina told me that it had something to do with going to them. What? How are we supposed to go to them? They're right here. Saka protested as he gestured at his Jien. Well, she also mentioned something called Jin Zen, Blade Zen, but she never actually explained it. Mentally, he was kicking himself for not pumping Kushina for more information about it. Jin Zen? Repeated Naruto. You're going to have them meditate to reach the spirit inside their sword. Unless you have accelerant, Jiraiya, that process could take longer than a month. I know that, Naruto. He fell silent. As he tried to think of a solution, he noticed something. Saka, why are you sweating? Huh? Sweating? The tribesman repeated. Yes, you're sweating. Why? It's a nice night, and you're the only one who is sweating. They all looked at him. He was sweating. He wiped his hand across his forehead and looked at the sweat. I guess I'm still not used to this warmer climate. It's been half a year since you left the South Pole, Zuko pointed out. You should have gotten used to it by now. This is coming from the guy who was shivering as he stood in warm water today, he retorted. Wait, Naruto interrupted. Say that again. This is coming from the guy who was shivering as he stood in warm water today? He repeated, confused. Sokka's right, Zuko, that water was warm, the blonde told the scarred dragon. You shouldn't have been shivering. It felt cold to me. And while the weather is warm, it's not warm enough to make you sweat, Sokka. He looked over at the toad sage. You thinking what I'm thinking? He asked. Jiraiya smiled. I'm thinking that we just found our accelerant. The next day, as the sun set, Saka and Zuko were preparing themselves to attempt Jin Zen. Both had stripped down to their undergarments. Saka sat in front of a blazing fire while Zuko sat beneath a waterfall. Both were affected by what was happening to them. Saka looked like he was sweating buckets while Zuko looked like he was 2 steps away from turning blue. Are you sure this is necessary? Zuko asked, trying to make sure he didn't stutter from the cold. Yes, it is, Jiraiya told him. Now, are the both of you ready? I'm sweating out my existence here, Saka said in reply. Just tell us what to do already. Alright, I want you both to focus on your swords and only your swords. Saka, I want you to let the fire fill of all of your senses, except for your focus. Zuko, I want you to the same thing with the water. They nodded and then turned their attention to their swords. Sokka's Jien was stabbed into the ground in front of him, while Zuko's Dao swords rested on his lap. They focused solely on their swords, trying not to let anything else distract them. As they concentrated, their senses were slowly overcome by one thing. Soon, Sokka could only hear the crackle of the fire and feel the heat on his skin. Zuko could only hear the sound of rushing water and feel its weight pounding relentlessly on his back. Even though they could feel what the fire or water was doing to them, they kept their concentration on their swords. Sokka blinked once, but when he opened his eyes again, he was sitting in front of the fire. He was back in the forest. So you've come, he heard the voice of the black wolf. He turned around and saw him sitting on the same rock. Yeah, I have, he answered, keeping his eyes on the wolf. Why? So I can learn your name. Learn my name? The wolf repeated. Do you think it would be that easy? Do you think you can learn my name because I belong to you? Weren't you the one who was trying to tell me it the last time we met? Do not patronize me. Your fear hangs around you like a cloak. Had you been an animal, you would be dead. It is because of that fear you cannot hear my name. Then how do I hear your name? You must decide. It stood up, lifted its head up and howled into the night. All around the clearing, from behind the trees, other wolves began to appear. They slowly came into view, padding down into the clearing. These wolves will attack you. If you smell of fear, they will tear you, limb from limb. If you try to run, they will easily take you down, for there is no escape. So, what will you do? Will you flee? If you do, then you don't deserve me. It turned around and padded away, leaving him alone in the clearing. The wolves crept in closer and closer. Soon, they surrounded him. Their eyes all looked at him like he was to be eaten. How the hell am I going to get out of this one? He asked himself. I'm outnumbered here. Every instinct is telling me to run and hide. But I can't do that, they'll be on me in a second. What do I do? He tried to think of a solution. All the while, the wolves moved closer. They bared their teeth and growls began to go off. The growling snapped him out of his thinking and made him look at the wolves. That was when he realized something. Hang on. All the things I'm thinking of are because of fear. These wolves will try to attack me because I smell of fear. If I want to defeat them, I must be rid of fear. He took a deep breath and stared out at the wolves. So, who will be the first to try and kill me? He asked them. A single wolf growled louder and lunged for his throat. The second it was airborne, he grabbed it by the neck, slamming it into the ground and snapped its neck. He turned back to the others. Who's next? He demanded. If you want to try and kill me, remember that I am not the prey here. You all are. The growls stopped. The wolves slowly backed away until they turned back around and ran back for the forest. Well done, the black wolf told him as it reappeared, leaping down into the clearing. You have proven yourself to be able to get rid of your fear. Now you'll be able to hear my name. That's what I was hoping for. He turned his gaze on the dead wolf. I just wish I didn't have to kill him to earn that privilege. The wolf grinned. Who said you killed anyone here? It walked over to the dead wolf and gave it a lick. The wolf opened its eyes again. It stood up, its neck clearly unbroken, and nodded its head to the black wolf. It took off for the forest. In here, if you don't want it to be dead, it doesn't have to be. That was really cool, he stated as he watched the wolf disappear into the forest. Are you ready to hear my voice, Saka? The black wolf asked. He turned to face it. Yes, I am. Then listen well. My name is... Zuko opened his eyes after blinking. He found himself on the same mountain ledge. What are you doing here? He heard the person from before ask. He turned around and saw him standing out on the air. I came here to find out your name, he replied. Are you serious? After all you did, you have the gall to want to know my name? He all but shouted. Of all the insufferable, egotistical, unbelievable. Is this going to take a while? Shut up. I'm ranting here. I heard. But we need to move on. You can rant later. I can rant later. Oh no, I'm ranting now. No, you're not. He yelled back. I am not going to stand and listen to you complaining about everything I did wrong. I came here so I could know the name of my swords. The echo of his shout rang out through the entire place. The spirit floated in the air, staying silent. If you want to know my name, then you'll prove yourself to me. It's the least you can do after everything I had to put up with you. What do I have to do? Simple. He turned around and started to walk away. You must follow me. What? There's nothing but air. If I try to follow you, I'll fall. He turned back to face him. That's your fear talking. Have you already forgotten the first part of the creed? He continued walking until he had disappeared. Make your choice soon, there's a storm coming. As he spoke, thunderclouds appeared overhead, and rain began to fall. The ledge soon became slick with water. If he made a wrong step, he could fall. I can't stay here. I'll be forced over the edge by the rain and the wind, he thought. But if I try to follow him, I'll fall off the edge anyway. And what in the name of Agni did he mean by the creed? What first part? He tried to figure out what the spirit meant. That was when it came to him. He meant the inscriptions. The inscriptions are the creed. The first part said to abandon my fear. He eyed the edge. That's easier said than done. But if I want to live, I have to do it. He took a breath, lifted a foot and took a step over the edge. As the foot came back down, a small cloud bank formed underneath it and held it. Looking down at it, he took another step and another cloud bank formed underneath that too. He took a few more hesitant, then grew more confident, and started to run. The cloud banks kept forming underneath his feet until they formed a road for him. He ran and ran, never stopping. He wasn't sure, but he knew that if he stopped, he would fall. Within a few minutes he saw the spirit again. He doubled his speed and charged straight at him. When he was within a few feet of the spirit, he stopped. You wanted me to follow you. Here I am, he declared. I guess so, the spirit admitted. Take a look around and tell me where we are. They stood at the peak of a mountain. Even though the storm still lashed out around them, not a single drop of water or a gust of wind touched them. Above them was a hole in the storm clouds, showing blue skies and the sun shining down on them. "We're in the eye of the storm," he declared. "This is also where you must be whenever you fight," the spirit told him. "You must be able to wield power, but also keep a calm mind whenever you do. If you keep this state of mind, my power is yours to wield. Do you understand?" "Yes, I do." He looked at the spirit. "Have I earned your trust?" "Yes, you have. You may now learn my name." "Then who are you?" "I am." End flashback. They stood firm with their blades drawn. Zuko held the Dao swords with the blades down and the tips touching. Saka also held his sword in both hands, pointing downwards. "Do you remember what to do?" the spirits of their Zanpakutos asked. "Abandon our fear. Don't give an inch. Advance and never stop. If we retreat, we will age. Be afraid and we'll die." "What are we to do?" "Defend your kingdom of snow-covered forests," Saka chanted. "Ride the storm and roar fire," Zuko chanted. "Then call our names." "Kuroga, Black Fang," cried out Saka. The jian split into two and grew heavier in his hands. The blades were a little longer and thicker. He held them in a reverse grip, making them look like actual fangs. "Soria, Twin Dragon!" shouted Zuko. His swords retained their basic forms but underwent some changes. The cross guards were replaced with dragon heads, their open mouths holding the blades. Glowing line also came from the mouths, like the dragon heads were breathing something. On the right sword, the color was red. On the left, it was blue. Chains were attached to the hilts, and were embedded in his arms. "What are those swords?" Kabuto asked himself. "They've changed shape and feel different somehow." How interesting, Orochimaru thought. But that was as far as his interest went for now. "Do you think just because your swords are different you are safe?" He gave a sinister laugh. "Kushina, please disprove their theory," he ordered the silent dead corpse. As this was all going on, she had sheathed her sword again. Resting her hand on the hilt, she rushed them in the fast pace as before. But before she was even halfway across, she was forced to draw her sword to protect herself from Saka, who suddenly appeared in front of her. They stood there, in deadlock. Then, to the surprise of both Orochimaru and Kabuto, he began to push her back. "What? How is this possible?" Kabuto asked. "When I release Kuroga, my speed and my strength are increased," Saka explained. "You'll find it more difficult to kill me now." He pushed her back until he heard the crackle of lightning behind him. He broke the deadlock and stepped off to the side, giving her a clear view of Zuko. He held the left sword by the chain, which somehow elongated itself, and was twirling it in the air like a flail. The blade was covered in lightning. It spun so fast that it looked an actual circle of lightning spun above his head. He swung the sword down, and when it hit the ground, a wave of lightning shot at her. She rolled to the side and charged, her sword raised high. He swung the right sword at her. It flew out of his grip, extending the chain, as it was covered in flames. She took a step back to avoid the sword cutting through her neck, but the arc of fire left behind in its wake caught her by surprise. She was pushed back, burns showing on her face, arms and through the holes burned in the shirt. "When Soria is released, it gives me control over lightning and fire, which are imbued in these swords," he told them. "The chains allow me to fight at a distance, and where the chains are, my fire and lightning can go." "Impressive, boy, but you're forgetting that Kushina cannot be harmed. You've seen her regrow a leg and a heart. Mere burns will disappear in seconds," Orochimaru told him. He smirked. "Are you sure about that?" He looked at Kushina, and the others followed his gaze. The burns were still there, and showed no signs of healing. "What? The burns should have been gone by now," Kabuto protested. "Hey, Orochimaru," Naruto spoke out. "Your teammate had a particular theory about these swords. He believed that any damage they caused to a person brought back to life by the Edo Tensei would be permanent. I guess he was right." He laughed when he saw the surprised expression on the traitor's face. "No need to have that look on your face. You should have realized that Jiraiya knew you would use the Edo Tensei. Regardless of who you summoned, they would have faced Saka and Zuko. Finish this fight, guys," he ordered his teammates. Saka charged straight at her with both swords at the ready. She raised her sword and ready to defend, but he was too fast for her. He charged past her, his Zanpakuto appearing in a blur. When he stopped, both of her arms simply fell off. Before anything else could happen, Zuko threw both swords at her. The left became a bolt of lightning and plunged through her heart. The right became a ball of fire and hit her head, setting it afire. He pulled them out of her. As they flew back to his hands, the corpse fell to the ground. The fire spread to the rest of the body. They all watched as the corpse burned. When the fire finally died, all that was left was the charred and blackened remains. How? Asked Kabuto. How is this possible? How could she lose to a bunch of weaklings? Just because you don't know them, doesn't mean they're weaklings, Naruto told him as he stood up. And who said you could talk? You still sound like an ass. Just shut up and save us the earache. Who are you to tell me what to do, Naruto? You are nothing. You are still the same pathetic shinobi 3 years. You couldn't. Whatever he was going to say next couldn't come out, due to the fact Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him and rammed his knee into his face, breaking his nose and his glasses. I believe I told you to shut up, the blonde told him, quickly and methodically broke his legs, ignoring his screams of pain. He then pulled out a syringe from his back pouch and injected it into his neck. The screams died as Kabuto fell asleep. A knockout drug, Orochimaru noted as he looked on. Weren't you supposed to use that before you broke his legs, Naruto? It'll keep him out cold for about 5 days, he replied without looking at the snake sage. Such a long time, are you that worried he might somehow come to my defense? Something along those lines, yes. He chuckled. I believe earlier you said you were offered the chance to kill me. Yeah, I plan on doing it real soon. Then why wait? His neck elongated and his head flew at him, his mouth opened and ready to bite. Naruto reacted by swinging his legs into a kick, knocking his head away. Using his heads to push off from the ground, he sprang into a kick and aimed for his opponent's midsection. He hit home and Orochimaru went flying, crashing into the coffin and shattering it. Saka, Zuko, Akela, back off, Naruto told them. This is personal. They nodded and walked over to the tree, their zanpakutos returning to their sealed state. Personal, is it? I'm honored, Orochimaru remarked as he stood back up and his neck returned to normal. Seniai Tajashu, many hidden shadow snake hands, he cried, making the same punching motion as before. But instead of a few snakes coming out of his sleeve, many came out and they all flew at Naruto. He reached into his holster and pulled out multiple shuriken. He threw them and then quickly folded his hands through a series of hand seals. Futon, Shinkajin, wind style, vacuum blade. He spewed wind onto the shurikens, coating them and sharpening them. They tore through the snakes and flew at his opponent. Futon, Detapa, wind style, great breakthrough. A huge gust of wind flew out of his mouth. It hit the shurikens and turned them around, sending them back at Naruto, who ducked down to avoid them. Madara no Jin, formation of 10,000 snakes. Snakes fell from his mouth and slithered over to Naruto, their mouths open ready to attack. He leapt backwards into the air, his hands already going through the motions. Futon, Rankuden, wind style, drilling air bullet. He fired off multiple air bullets at the snakes, destroying them. Impressive, Naruto, very impressive. You've grown, Orochimaru praised him as he landed back on the ground. Fighting in a war will do that. You should know. He had to improve, otherwise he would be dead or worse, people under his command would be dead. Indeed I should. He put his hands on his stomach and pressed upwards. His mouth bugled out and as he opened it, the head of a snake appeared. It opened its mouth and a sword handle appeared. He grabbed it and pulled the rest of the sword out, revealing it to be a katana. Why can't you just have that in a scabbard like the rest of us? The blonde asked him as he eyed the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, grass-mowing sword. I swear you get a kick out of being disgusting. He chuckled. Why don't you draw your Jien, Naruto? I'll draw it when I feel like it. It's not like you can make me do it any sooner. Why don't we put that suggestion to the test? He lunged forward, his sword in a thrusting position. He aimed for the stomach, but his opponent bent backwards so the sword would just pass over him. He brought himself into a handstand and then swung his legs into a rotating kick. The first kick hit his opponent's midsection, but Orochimaru caught the second kick with his free hand. You'll have to do better than that, he remarked. He grabbed the leg and yanked it, sending him crashing down to the ground. He swung the Kusanagi at his head, but he caught it with his hands. I know, Naruto replied. He folded his legs back and then shot them at his opponent's stomach. The force and power of the kick forced the traitor to step back, pulling the sword with him. It sliced open Naruto's hands, letting blood spill out as he stood back up. "Why don't you use the Rasengan, spiraling sphere, Naruto? I'm surprised you haven't used it yet," he remarked as the cuts on the blonde's hands healed themselves. His opponent's answer was to reach into his holster and throw shuriken at him. He lifted his sword and swatted them aside with casual ease. But that was what Naruto was counting on. As soon as Orochimaru had raised the Kusanagi up to swat the shuriken aside, he charged forward, already concentrating his chakra into his hand. "Rasengan!" he yelled as he rammed the completed jutsu into his chest. It expanded and sent Orochimaru flying away. As he crashed into the ground, there was a big hole in his shirt along with blood seeping from a large wound in his chest. As both Saka and Zuko began to think he was dead, his mouth opened and 2 hands emerged from it, followed by the arms and the rest of a slime-covered Orochimaru. "Shedding your skin, I guess you are a snake after all," Naruto remarked as the previous skin of Orochimaru rapidly decomposed before breaking apart and drifting away on the wind. "I see you've gotten better at using the Rasengan," Orochimaru praised him. "But I am disappointed you did not try to add your element to it." "Who says I didn't?" he asked. "Then please, by all means, try it on me." "Nah, it'd be a waste of chakra. Besides, I'm winning." "And how do you figure that?" "Your reactions are getting slower, your attacks are getting stiffer, and you're supposed to be fast enough to shed your skin while flying backwards from a jutsu. Instead, you shed it after landing?" His face sprouted a smirk. "The body you have is rejecting you, isn't it? You figure this be quick and easy, so you didn't bother switching bodies. How lucky for me." "Jiraiya told you all of this, didn't he?" Orochimaru asked him. If he was a lesser person, he would have frowned. "I was training with him for a month, and we both knew you'd be coming. Late-night discussions did come around. And to think, he tried to convince me to come back to the village once. Yeah, well, he stopped trying a long time ago." "Indeed, he has. Now he tries to have me killed." "You brought it on yourself when you crossed the line," the blonde said with a dangerous scowl. "And which line would that be?" The scowl turned into a glare. "You know damn well which one." He chuckled. "How ironic that you, who acted once much like my old teammate, chose to leave the village while Sasuke, who is almost identical to myself, chose to stay. Tell me, Naruto, if Sasuke had been successful in coming to me, would you have stayed in Konoha? I guess it'd depend on whether the civilian council would have me killed or not." "Fair enough of an answer. Shall we finish this fight?" "No. I'm ending it." "And do you plan to do that?" he asked Naruto. "Although you might have experience in war, I do as well, and mine far outstrips yours. I am quite capable of beating you, even in this weakened state. It's not the amount. It's what you learn with it. Weren't you the one who wanted to master all the jutsu out there? You must learn all the names of the jutsu created. If that's true, then you must know this one." He drew his jin, brought it into a salute, then brought back down to his side and flipped it into a reverse grip. As he did that, his chakra flared up and took visible form. The blue energy raced upwards and covered him completely, making it look like he was standing amidst a blue inferno. And out of the inferno, creatures made of chakra tried to claw into existence. They succeeded and had taken the form of 9 dragons, floating in the air behind him. When he saw that, Orochimaru's eyes went wide. "How is this possible?" he demanded. He never thought that his opponent of all people would have this ability. "It's my birthright." "But it was lost. It was lost when Uzushiogakure was destroyed. Both Konoha and I searched for it." He had spent hours hunting through the ruins, looking for it. Day and night he had searched, only to find nothing. "It left Uzushio long before its destruction," the blonde said in reply. "What is that, HM?" Deidara asked. "I don't know, but it looks scary," Toby replied. "Hey Kakuzu, have you seen this before?" Haiden asked his partner. "No, my bounties have never used this kind of jutsu," he answered. "Kisame, why are you crying?" Conan asked, getting everyone's attention. He was indeed crying, but he was smiling as well. "It actually exists," he whispered reverently. "It's been a long time since I've seen that jutsu," Anoki remarked quietly as he looked on. "I was never sure if I wanted to see it again." "What on earth are you talking about, old man?" Kuratsuchi asked him. Never mind him, what kind of jutsu is Naruto using? Kankuro demanded. He had never seen anything like this before. You think I know? Temari asked back. Why are you crying, Chojuro? Demanded Ao. What happened to that confidence you had earlier? These are tears of happiness, sir, he explained. I never thought I would get the honor of seeing this jutsu. Chojuro, what is this jutsu? Mei asked her bodyguard. Just watch, Lady Mizukage, Jiraiya told her. Now you're crying, B? What is going on? The Raikage asked his brother, who had tears in his eyes as well. Brother, if you were a swordsman, you would know what this jutsu is. And you too would weep with joy at the honor of seeing it, B told him. The way he said made everyone in the box look at him. He had spoken without rapping. The shinobi from Kumo knew if Killer B had spoken without rapping, what came out of his mouth was to be treated seriously. What kind of jutsu is that? Ino asked as they watched the dragons appear. Both Niji and Hinata activated their Byakugan to see if that was really chakra. They immediately deactivated it and cried out in pain. Hinata! Cried Kiba as he and Shino checked their teammate. What's the matter, Niji? Tenon asked as she and Lee did the same. That's really his churka, he answered, covering his eyes. That had really been a dumb move now that he thought about it. Hinata was covering her eyes as well, but also nodded in agreement. Would someone tell me what's going on? Toph demanded. All she knew was that Naruto and the creepy snake guy were standing opposite of one another. That was it. Naruto called up some sort of blue energy, and it transformed into 9 dragons, Katara told her. That blue energy is his chakra, Jiraiya explained. Lord Jiraiya, what is that jutsu? Lee asked. And why is every person carrying a sword crying? Shikamaru also asked. There were many people in the stands with tears in their eyes. They all looked at the crowds and saw what Shikamaru was talking about. They're crying because for them, this is an honor that they never thought of having. They are also crying because this will probably be the only time they will see it, the Toad Sage told them. Why does this jutsu mean so much to them? Suki asked. It had to be something for people to cry like that. It's a legendary jutsu, having been used only by a few. It is called the Uzumaki Kenjutsu, Kuzuryu no Danmaku, Uzumaki sword technique, barrage of the 9 dragons. I can see where one part of that comes from, Azula remarked as she looked at the blue dragons. So how does it work? It's a simple barrage of punches, kicks and sword strikes, he told her, and, by extension, everyone else there. Each dragon is 9 sword strikes, 9 kicks and 9 punches. All in all, the total amount of hits is 243. Doesn't it sound a little much? Ino asked. Kid, this is the jutsu that ended the First Shinobi World War, Jiraiya told her. Everyone stared at him. You serious? Asked Kiba. You guys know that the Land of Water is a collection of islands, right? He asked the shinobi. They nodded while the others looked both interested and curious. Before the First World War, it used to be one big island. The implication struck home fast. You're kidding, Choji said in protest. No, I am not. This jutsu was used when the head of the Uzumaki clan at that time and the Shodaime Mizukage fought each other. The last attack of the jutsu, the Tenryutai no Hoko, Roar of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor, killed the Mizukage and caused the outermost parts of the island to break off. Some drifted away little bit, others fell beneath the ocean. The Land of Water was in a hectic time after that. And now, Naruto knows how to use this jutsu, Shikamaru stated. What a drag. As Naruto stood across from his enemy, the 9 dragons staring at the snake sage with hate in their eyes, he remembered how it was he came to know this jutsu. Flashback, they were taking a small break for lunch while Jiraiya told them of how they were doing. You are all doing a little better, but I can still read you like an open book. Even though the 2 of you have been practicing with your Zanpakutos, it's still easy to beat you, he told Zuko and Saka. Well, you are a Sannin. It'd probably take us more than a month of hellish training to beat you, Naruto remarked from where he sat on the ground. He was taking every opportunity to do so. I wouldn't put that on a scroll yet. Oh. That reminds me, Saka said before reaching over for his bag. He dug through it before pulling out what he was looking for. Here it is, he exclaimed as he held a scroll in his hands. What is that? Zuko asked. It's a scroll Master Piendao gave me after training me. It's supposed to only be opened and read by an Uzumaki. He offered the scroll to Naruto. So, it's yours. The blonde took the scroll and looked it over. What's with the complicated knot? He asked aloud, looking at said knot. I don't know. I guess it's there to ensure only an Uzumaki can untie it. Well, I guess it's a good thing I know how to untie it. He pulled out a kunai and cut through just below the knot. You are definitely an Uzumaki, Jiraiya stated drily as the remains of the knot fell to the ground. Thanks for telling me something I already know. He opened the scroll and looked at it. Hey, do the words Kuzuryu no Damika mean anything to you guys? Say that again, the Toad Sage told him, sounding like he could not believe what he had just heard. The blonde was mystified but complied. Do the words Kuzuryu no Damika mean anything to you guys? He quickly walked over and took the scroll out of his hands. His eyes quickly roamed over its contents. Merciful Kami, it survived. End flashback. He looked directly at Orochimaru. So, shall we get this over with? He asked rhetorically. The first dragon roared and lunged for the traitor. He tried to avoid it, but the dragon caught him easily and held him in place with his claws. Naruto charged him and began the barrage. When he stopped, the dragon tossed him away like a rag doll. He tried to stand and move, but the second dragon pinned him to the ground. The assault continued. After 27 strikes were given, Orochimaru was released from the grip of a dragon. But within a few seconds, the next dragon would barrel into him and take hold of him, starting the process again. But when the 8th round was done, the dragon threw him up into the air. The final dragon flew upwards. But when it reached him, it didn't take hold of him. Instead, it just encircled him. The reason was soon made clear when Naruto ran up the wall and leapt for him. He used the dragon as a stepping stone as he pummeled Orochimaru. He would take a step, strike his enemy, leap for the wall, jump back and repeat the process. Nobody bothered to ask how he could step on the dragon, considering it was made from chakra, because they were too busy watching him give someone a well-deserved ass-whooping. After he gave the 26th hit, he did something different. Instead of leaping for the wall, he leapt upwards. He flew up into the air, going higher and higher, until he reached his zenith. He hung there, in the air. As the dragon encircling Orochimaru disappeared, he closed his hand into a fist and drew it back. That was when gravity took control of him again. As he fell, he angled himself to fall faster and towards his target. He began to channel chakra into his arm. As he reached Orochimaru, he slammed his fist into his stomach. Tenryurai no Hoko! He roared. The chakra in his arm surged forward and into Orochimaru, taking the form of a dragon larger than the others and much more majestic and regaler. It took the snake Sannin in its jaws and flew towards the ground. It slammed into the earth, causing a shockwave that everyone could feel and a large cloud of dust. When the dust cleared, Naruto had landed on the ground and there was a 15-inch crater where Orochimaru had crashed. If one was to look at him, they would see that he was a mess. Multiple bruises and cuts littered his body. It looked like it would be painful for him to move, let alone stand up. But he did stand up, only to fall to his knees. His mouth bulged and opened, revealing another Orochimaru covered in slime. But even the new Orochimaru looked like he had just come out of a beating. Granted, he didn't any cuts or bruises, he was the way he held himself. He collapsed to the ground after fully shedding his skin. When he heard footsteps getting closer, he struggled to raise his head. He looked up and saw Naruto standing over him. How is this possible? How can you beat me? He demanded with a weak voice. I told you already, you crossed the line, the blonde told him coldly. I've hated you for the past 3 years and now, I can finally get satisfaction. Please, have mercy on me, he asked, trying to get away by any means. Naruto's eyes flashed red when he heard those words. Have mercy! He roared as he grabbed his shirt and yanked him up, so they looked each other directly in the face. You wish to have mercy after all you've done? Turning around, he hurled him out of the crater. He sailed through the air and slammed into the wall. He fell to the ground and struggled to sit up. When he did, he saw Naruto slowly walking towards him, his eyes back to their normal blue. But he didn't just see him, he saw the Shinigami hovering behind him, with a grin both malicious and sadistic. For the first time for a long while, his arrogance had disappeared and was replaced with fear. He was afraid that death would finally claim him. I don't want to die, he thought in a panic. Please don't kill me, he begged. I'll give you anything you want. Naruto stopped in front of him and placed his Jien on his throat. No! Don't do it! Aang cried out as he stood up from his seat. He tried to leap down over the railing but was held back by Suki and Katara. Aang, what are you doing? Katara asked as she struggled to hold him down. I have to stop him from doing this. I can't let Naruto kill him, he said as he tried to get loose. He asked for mercy. There's nothing you can do, Twinkle Toes. That guy is going to die, Toph told him in a somber voice. She knew it was going to happen and there was nothing they could about. Not if I can help it. He doesn't need to be killed. Azula suddenly reached out, grabbed him, and pulled him back into the seat. Aang, you are going to sit down, and you are going to shut up, she ordered the air nomad. That man is going to be killed, whether you like it or not. Anything I want, huh? Naruto asked, still holding the Jien at the snake sage's throat. You would offer me money? Yes, Orochimaru said. Power beyond my wildest imagination? Of course. All the jutsus you ever had or found at my command? I would give them to you myself, he promised. You give me anything and everything I asked for? Yes. Please, let me live. The blonde stared at him for what seemed to be a very long time. Finally, he scoffed, withdrew his Jien, turned around and walked away. Orochimaru stood up on shaky legs. As he watched him walk away, his fear turned into anger at being beaten easily and being humiliated by begging for his life. With a snarl of anger, he lunged for Naruto, intent on killing him with his bare hands. Before anyone could shout out a warning to him, he turned around to face him and threw his Jien at him. The sword spun through the air and struck the snake sage in the throat, pinning him to the wall. He walked over to the dying man and took hold of the handle. He leaned into his ear and whispered one simple sentence. I want my Gigi back, you son of a bitch. He pulled the Jien out and beheaded the traitor with one swing. Everyone just watched in silence as the head of the traitor of Konoha flew the air before landing on the ground. I don't believe it, Mei said with surprise, staring down at the field. Neither do I, but he's done it, A told her. I guess the kid will want a medal for this, Anoki remarked. Tsunade and Jiraiya shared a quiet look. She nodded once and touched the wireless radio. Take it down, she ordered. He did it. He actually did it, Choji said in shock. We know he did it. We saw it too, Ino told him. Yeah, but still. Yeah, go Naruto. Kiba whooped loudly. Our friend is so very youthful, Lee declared with tears falling down his face. He has proven himself to be a hero to Konoha. Keep it down, Lee, Tenten told him. We might agree with you, but you don't need to tell to everyone here that. He can tell it to Naruto himself, Neji said. The seal has been deactivated. They all looked up and saw that the seal was visibly coming down. When it had disappeared, they were going to leap down and congratulate him when smoke began to sprout up in the stands, the Kage box, the booths, and on the field. What the hell? Who threw the smoke bombs? Kiba demanded. Are we under attack? Hinata asked. Who would be attacking us? Ino asked. Maybe this isn't an attack, Shikamaru said, concentrating. This could be a... His eyes went wide at the realization. This could be a what? Choji asked him. It could be a distraction, he finished. As he said that, the smoke in the arena began to clear. When it was all gone, the body and head of Orochimaru were still there. But Saka, Akela, Zuko, and Naruto were not. They're gone, Lee cried out. Where did they go? They are not the only ones who are missing, Shino told him. The seats holding Aang, Toph, Suki, Katara, and Azula were empty. Jiraiya was gone too. Team Avatar raced down an empty street away from the arena. Is everything ready? Naruto asked Jiraiya as they ran. Time was of the essence now. Of course, they're waiting for us outside the Aviary, he answered. I have a clone watching them. What are you talking about? Katara asked, trying to make sure she didn't fall behind. Who are they? No time to answer, just run, Naruto ordered her. They kept on running until they hit the Aviary. Standing outside of the building was Momo, Fa Ning, and Appa. They were being watched by another Jiraiya who, when he saw the original, disappeared in a plume of smoke. Is everyone here? Jiraiya asked as they gathered around the animals. Looks like it, Saka answered as he and Zuko counted heads. Everyone was there. Let's move it along, Jiraiya, Naruto told him. Not unless we want company. He kept looking back at where they had come from. He was certain he was already a faint outline of Lee coming straight at them. I'm already done, he replied, finishing the hand seals. He slammed his hand onto the ground and a seal array appeared around them. The array glowed white, and they were engulfed in smoke. They all felt a moment of being squeezed tightly together. But when the feeling disappeared and the smoke cleared, they saw that they were not in Konoha. They were in the beach house back on Ember Island. Wah, how can we be? Ing tried to ask, but he was too stunned. Thanks for doing this, Geratora, Jiraiya thanked a nearby toad, who was standing over a used seal tag. Not a problem. I'll see you later, he replied before disappearing in a plume of smoke. Are we really back? Katara asked. She almost couldn't believe it, but everything around her seemed to say otherwise. Yeah, we're back. I recognize this ground, Toph told her. Ah, finally, we're out of Konoha, Naruto declared with a sigh of relief as he took out a cigarette and lit it. That took way too long. He placed it on his lips and took a drag. What are you talking about? Suki asked him. It's time for you to spill, Naruto, Saka told him. Both you and Jiraiya have secret of the entire month we were training, and you knew things even before then. What was going on? Both Naruto and Jiraiya shared a look with each other. All right, Naruto said, shrugging and blowing out smoke. I guess you all can know what had happened now. Even though the trip to Konoha was not intentional, the month-long stay was. It was? Katara repeated. He gave her a look. Come on, Katara. Do you really think I'd stayed there for a month with no plans of escaping? I would have been able to break us out of there within a week, easy. Then why didn't you? Zuko asked him. It actually goes back a couple of months, Jiraiya told them. It started when Tsunade had just sent Team Guy and Team Asuma to help you guys. Flashback. The thought of Naruto being a shinobi that hasn't been seen since the clan wars chilled them. But that was a momentary thought. You didn't come back here just to discuss Naruto, Tsunade said. What else did you bring? My contacts have been telling me disturbing news, he told her. It seems that Orochimaru has been sending shinobi to track Sasuke every time he leaves the village. Can we take it, she swore. Have there been attempts to take him? No, right now they just seem to be observing him. But if this keeps up, Orochimaru might make a move to take him. I'll put an ANBU squad on standby. Whenever Team Kakashi leaves the village, they'll follow and make sure Sasuke isn't kidnapped. Tsunade, sooner or later, we will have to take care of Orochimaru. That was a subject they tended to avoid, but they couldn't anymore. I know that, Jiraiya. But would you be able to kill him? To be honest, I don't know, he admitted. After all, the man they were talking about had been their teammate and friend once. Neither do I. Besides, it's not exactly easy to find him. Besides a few lucky times when you found where he was, Orochimaru is practically invisible. Well, what if we didn't go after him, but make him come to us? He suggested. And how are we going to do that? He smiled. I've got an idea. End flashback. Originally, the plan was to have Sasuke be a proctor for the exams. We figured Orochimaru wouldn't have been able to resist the idea of kidnapping him and humiliating Konoha in the process. It was shaky at best, but it was all we had to go with, he told them. So, what happened to change the plan so much? Zuko asked. What happened was the Gaki here took control of Ba Sing Se. He pointed a thumb at Naruto. Flashback. Tsunade sat in the chair, watching Teams Guy, Asuma, and Kurenai leave the room. Jiraiya, get in here, she ordered. He appeared on the windowsill. I'm right here, Princess, he said, stepping into the room. Well, there goes our attempt to bring him back, she grumbled. Actually, it gives me the perfect opportunity to go after him, he replied as he came around the desk. And it could possibly help us with our snake problem. How will you be able to get him when the others couldn't? He gave her a look. Okay, number 1, it's me, remember? Number 2, since he had effectively kicked the others out of there, he'll think he's safe from us. I'll be able to use that to my advantage. She was silent for a few minutes. Wait until they write the reports. After you read all of them, you can go after him. Thank you, Tsunade. I remember how this works, he replied sarcastically as he left the room. End flashback. After that, I came to the Bending Countries and spied on Naruto, he told them. A few days before I kidnapped you guys, I had sent word to Tsunade. She started leaking information that Naruto would be in the upcoming Chunin exams. And that's when I came into this. Naruto took over the explanation. When I first awoke in the prison, Jiraiya was there. Flashback. He came awake, but he did not show it. The last thing he remembered was inhaling knockout gas and hearing a voice he hadn't heard in 3 years. I have to figure out where I am, where the others are, and how we're going to get out, he thought to himself. Kid, if you're going to pretend to still be asleep, do it on some other person, that same familiar voice told him. He opened his eyes and saw that it was Jiraiya standing on the other side of the bars. Oh great, it's you. I guess that means I'm in Konoha, huh? He grumbled. It's nice to see you too, kid, the Toad Sage replied. He tried to stand up from where he lay and took notice of where he was. The reason there were bars between him and Jiraiya became painfully obvious suddenly. Why am I in a prison cell? And what's with the chains? He asked. Well, you are a fugitive from Konoha and a former shinobi. Fair enough. He sighed and sitting down on the bed. How long were you watching me? Since the Toad Sage had been the one to capture them, it made sense that he had been the one to be keeping a watchful eye. Since you came back to the Fire Nation. Let me guess, she wants me back? That is one part of it, but it's a secondary issue. The main reason we brought you back was to make you an offer. Like what? How would you like the chance to kill Orochimaru? Jiraiya asked him. He lifted his head up and looked him straight in the eye. Keep talking. End flashback. He then told me everything that they would be planning. To fool any spies that would be watching, I still had to act somewhat hostile and unwillingly to be in the village, the blonde explained. So, the whole thing was an act? Suki asked for clarification. Well, not everything. But that just made the whole thing more believable. Even Tsunade and Jiraiya were acting, even if they were alone. Why would they do that? Tofast? They were never sure if there were spies watching them, so they had to go with it. That would explain the conversation I had with Tsunade, Azula remarked shortly. She told you, huh? She didn't reply. I guess she knew you would keep them in line the best. What are you talking about? Katara asked, confused by where the conversation was going. As a part of the acting, Tsunade had given orders to the Konoha 11, Naruto told her, and the others. They were to accompany us when we came so they could keep an eye on me. Once the royal flaming asshole was taken care of, I would have come back to Konoha. If I refused and tried to resist, they would have knocked me unconscious, brought me back and wiped away the past 3 years. What? Everyone, except Azula, shouted. Their voices echoed all around them and probably would have alerted any guards, if there were any nearby. Those orders would never be carried out. They were to fool both the spies and the Konoha 11. Tsunade told Azula this to make sure you guys didn't know. Why? Saka asked. Because there are a few members of this team that have moments of stupidity that are of epic proportions, he answered as he looked pointedly at both Katara and Aang. She told Azula so that she could stop the conversation before you started to ask about what the Konoha 11 were talking about. Each team has a blabber, so there was a good chance you might have heard of the orders. Katara, Aang, Toph, and Suki remembered that during the past month, Azula had changed the conversation or told the shinobi that they had to go quite often. They didn't think anything of it. They just thought it was her being a little impatient. How do you know all of this, Naruto? Suki asked. He pointed at Jiraiya. He told me when we were in the meat bar. But what were you doing in there before that? Personal business, he answered shortly. Again with the secrets? Asked Azula coldly. He looked at her, but she turned her gaze. Sighing, he turned his attention to the others. Fine, I was apologizing to somebody. Flashback. He walked into the place and when the people who worked there turned to see who it was, they froze. Is she up in her room? He asked AI. She nodded. He walked over to the steps but was cut off by a young woman. May I go up the stairs, Akiha? He asked her. She responded by slapping him across the face. Why are you here? She demanded. Akiha, please, you're going to make a scene, a nearby man told her. How are you doing, Edo? Naruto asked. All he got was a glare in response. He's not going up until I know what he's doing here, Akiha stated. I'm here to apologize. Apologize to whom, exactly? There are quite a few people here who deserve an apology from you. He's going to apologize to Mama, AI told her quietly. She looked at her, and then at him. Is that true? He nodded. Then get up there. She stepped out of his way, and he started to climb the stairs. He climbed up and up, until the noise downstairs became nothing but a dull sound. Finally, he stopped at a door. Reaching out, he knocked on it. "Mama, are you in there?" he called out. "It's Naruto." There was silence for a few seconds before he got an answer. "Come in," a woman's voice ordered. He opened the door and started to walk in, only to get a hard fist in his stomach. "Cammy, I think I preferred it when you smacked the back of my head," he wheezed out, trying not to fall to the ground. "After what you did, you deserve that," a middle-aged woman with streaks of gray in her black hair told him curtly. She removed her fist from his stomach and walked back into the room. "Yeah, I know." He followed her into the room. It was a little spacious, but that was to be expected. It was her room after all. "So why are you here?" she asked him, turning back around to face him once he was in the room proper. "To say I'm sorry." Her gaze turned hard at those words. "Sorry for what?" "I'm sorry for leaving without saying goodbye," he finished after a moment of silence. "I know I should have, but I just couldn't." "And why is that?" "If I said goodbye, everyone would have tried to convince me to stay," he told her. "They probably would have told me that everything would have turned out all right. I didn't want to face that, not after what I had just gone through. This entire place has thought of you as family," she told him with fury in her voice. "We gave you food and shelter. When someone tried to hurt you, we protected you. You were always welcomed here, and you spat on that by not even giving us the decency of saying goodbye when you left the village for places unknown. I know. How many times will I have to apologize?" She marched right up to him and looked him in the eye. He readied himself for another punch or a slap. Instead, she pulled him into a tight hug. "You've apologized enough already," she told him. He returned the hug with equal measure. When they broke the hug, they both noticed Jiraiya was at the door. "Hey," he said. "How long were you there?" she asked HM. "I walked in as you were hugging." "What do you need, Jiraiya?" Naruto asked him. "You, kid." He looked over at her, who simply nodded. "Come on." He turned around and walked down the stairs. Naruto followed him. They walked down the stairs and out of the building. "Where are we going?" he asked as they walked through the streets. The farther they went, the fewer people they would pass. Which the blonde felt was good, as he didn't have to put up with their looks. "You'll see," the Toad Sage answered shortly. They kept on walking down the streets and through the nights until they stopped before a gate. "We're here." "Why are we at the cemetery?" Naruto asked him, instantly recognizing where they were. "I figured you wanted to pay your respects to someone." They walked through the cemetery until they stopped in front of a statue of a flame. On the base that held the statue were the kanjis for Hokage. "Do you want some time alone?" "No," he answered after a few seconds of silence. "Do you miss him?" "I miss everyone I've lost," Jiraiya told him. "But yeah, I miss him." "What about you?" "Every single day, there are times when I've missed the smell of his pipe." He heard hands digging through pockets. He looked over and saw Jiraiya holding out a pack of cigarettes to him. "What are those for?" "It's the brand he used to smoke before he switched to the pipe. I always carried a pack around for sentimental reasons. If you miss the smell, this might help a bit." He took one, placed it in his mouth, and lit with the help of lighter Jiraiya held. He took a drag and began to cough. "How do you people do this?" he demanded as he wheezed. The old shinobi just laughed at that and smiled at him. "It takes a little practice. Try going slower on the next drag." They stood in silence as Naruto figured out how to properly smoke. Once he had figured it out, he looked over at the Toad Sage. "So, what's going to happen?" he asked, becoming all business. "Tsunade will give the Konoha 11 orders," Jiraiya said to him, being all business as well. "They are going to think that after the exams, they will follow you back to the bending countries to help with the Fire Lord. Once he is taken care, they will return to the village, and you are supposed to come with. If you refused, they would take you back by force and wipe your memories of the past 3 years. That's harsh. I'm glad that's not happening. Is it all the members of the Konoha 11? Asuma, Guy, and Kurenai will know the truth, but will have orders not to tell their students. Good to know. Is there anyone else in on the game? Only a few people, the Hokage has told herself. We must keep things as genuine as possible. Not even Shizen knows what we're doing. And why is that? We don't know if the spies will track her as well. Just keep in mind that at least one person in each exam will know what we're doing. And what are the exams? That was the key. He and his team had to pass the first 2 exams for him to kill Orochimaru. Exactly the same as the last one you took. That way, you know what to do. Nothing will be changed? He asked for clarification. Not a thing. End flashback. So that's how you got your information, Saka said, realizing what that meant. Pretty much, yeah, he agreed. But the information wasn't all. The exams themselves were rigged. Really? Asked Zuko. They didn't seem like that to him. The blonde nodded. In the first exam, the Chunins failed Genin who hadn't been caught cheating 5 times. In the second exam, there were ANBU squads waiting in the Forest of Death to ambush any remaining Genin squads. What for? Asked Suki. So that only my team and Orochimaru's team got to the final exam. It was my job in the first exam to target them and let the proctors know who they were. That way, they wouldn't be touched until the final exam. That was when we would so thoroughly embarrass them that Orochimaru would have no choice but to show himself. So you could kill him, Aang stated in an almost accusatory tone. That was the deal. I kill him, and the old hag lets us come back with some backup. He pointed at Jiraiya when he said backup. Him? Asked Katara, looking at the old shinobi. He's our backup? The Hokage couldn't have sent more? Katara, we've trained under him, Sokka told her. If his training methods are anything to go by, he's enough. Well, we're back. Now what are we going to do? Toph asked. Let's go make sure our things are all still here. Then we get some food, Zuko suggested. Everyone agreed and they all walked away. Jiraiya followed in order to find a room he could use. In the end, all who were left in the courtyard were Naruto and Azula. Neither of them said a word to each other. Finally, Naruto was the first to speak. Azula, he began to say, only to stop when she gave him a cold glare. I have to go make sure all my things are still here, she told him curtly before walking away and leaving him in the courtyard. He stared at her as she walked away. Out of the frying pan and into the fire, huh, Kit? The QB commented as she disappeared into the house. You shut up, he ordered as he walked into the house too. You were the one who caused this fire. So were you, Kit. So were you. Chapter 41, Arguing and Finding. Location, Ember Island. It had been a full day since they came back. They had gotten lucky as they still had a few days before the comet. That was something to worry about later. Now, they sat down to something a little more important, breakfast. Everyone sleep well? Katara asked as she started serving everyone. I slept well enough, Suki answered from where she sat. Same here, Toph said. I know our stay in Konoha wasn't by any means harsh, but it's nice to be back, Aang told the waterbender. Yeah, you're right, she agreed before looking around. Hey, where are Saka and the other guys? As if to answer her question, the sound of a body hitting the wall was heard right outside. They ran outside to see what was going on. What they saw was a 3-on-1 fight between Saka, Naruto, and Zuko against Jiraiya. The younger 3 were working as a team, fighting in tandem to take down their opponent. One would be aiming high, another targeted his midsection, and the third would go low. But despite what they did, Jiraiya looked like he wasn't even trying. He blocked their attacks with ease and only moved when he had to. His facial expression was one of mild amusement. The fight went on until all their feet were on the ground. He crouched down and swept their legs out from underneath them. They fell to the ground, and he stood over them with an amused smile. How's the view? He asked. We're looking at your ugly mug, Naruto replied as they stood back up. So, it's not a great one. What are you talking about? The ladies love this mug. You keep telling yourself that, FS-sensei. What does that mean? Katara asked once she heard that last bit. Fucking sadist, sensei, Sokka answered in way of explanation. She scowled at her brother. That's a horrible name. It's a well-deserved one. If you trained under him for a month, you'd call him that too. I still do not appreciate being attacked that early in the morning, Jiraiya berated them. You did it to us, so it's only natural we return the favor, Zuko told him. There had been days during that month when they would get an early morning wake-up call in the form of the Toad Sage attacking them. How long were you guys fighting? Suki asked them all. They all looked at each other for a moment. What time is it? Naruto asked. About 8 in the morning, Aang told him quietly. Ever since the air nomad watched him kill Orochimaru, he didn't really want to be around him. He didn't say it outright, but everyone knew that was what he was doing. Then we've been fighting since about sunrise. That long? Asked Suki. That's nothing. Some of our fights have gone on for much longer, Saka told her. The current record was about 8 in the morning to about 5 or 6 in the afternoon. What in the sake of the spirits for? That entire month we were training, not one of us was able to beat him, Zuko answered. Whether it was on our own or when we worked as a team, it didn't matter. You kids still have a ways to go if you want to beat me, Jiraiya stated cheerfully. Thankfully, I happen to know what his one weakness is, Naruto said to all of them. That got the old shinobi's attention. And what is that exactly? He challenged. The blonde looked up at the sun, measuring the time. I do believe that the morning swimmers are coming down to the beach right about now, and most of them are women. Jiraiya was gone quicker than they could blink. Where'd he go? Asked Katara. She looked around, but he wasn't in sight. He's a super pervert, remember? How long were you waiting to use that one? Zuko asked him with a grin on his face. The entire month, he answered with the same grin. After what we've been through, he deserves it, Sokka declared, an even bigger on his face. That's the idea. I said they were women. I didn't say how old they were. That got a laugh out of almost everyone there. Everyone except for Azula, that is. She had just stood there in silence, watching them. Naruto took notice and stopped laughing. Soon, everyone stopped laughing as the two just looked at each other. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, she turned around and walked away out of the beach house. What exactly happened between the two of you? Toph asked him. It's a private matter, he told her curtly before going after Azula. They watched as he ran out of the beach house. Anyone want to tell me what that was all about? Suki asked. Hey, we're as much in the dark as you guys are, Sokka told her. All we know is that the two had a fight. Azula walked through the forest with angry steps. She felt conflicted about Naruto. She knew that she shouldn't trust him because of his secrets, and should feel hurt because of them, but she still couldn't help loving him. For Agni's sake, what is wrong with me? She asked herself. He's been keeping secret after secret from me. I shouldn't be able to trust him after all the things he's kept from me. But every time I look at him, I can't help but be in love with him. She gave a mental scream. Why is this happening with me? Azula, Naruto said from behind, making her spin around. We need to talk. We need to talk? She repeated. You should have done that a long time ago. I had my reasons for keeping my secrets, you know that. And you couldn't tell me because you were afraid that I'd looked at you differently, is that it? Her sarcasm dripped from her words. You're doing it already. This is not me knowing about your little furry problem. This is me being angry at the number of secrets you have. Little furry problem, repeated the QB, sounding very outraged. Excuse me, I am a big furry problem. Would you keep quiet? His Jinchuriki asked him. You've never had a problem with my secrets before, he told her. No, I had a problem, but I never pushed you about it, she replied. So why now? You damn well know why. And you know why I didn't tell you. Stop using that excuse. It's not an excuse, it's a reason. She gave a yell of frustration and threw a fireball at him. He ducked down, letting it hit a tree. You are completely frustrating, she screamed at him. Calm down, Azula, he ordered her. No, I will not calm down. I don't what to think of you, and that's annoying me. So bending a fireball at me is a better alternative? Shut up and hold still so I can hit you. She bent a stream of fire at him, which he dodged by stepping to the side. She kept throwing fireball after fireball at him, but he kept dodging. He stayed low and kept moving forward to her. When he finally reached her, he tried to grab her hands. However, she remembered how he stopped her the last time that happened. She drew her hands back, crouched down, and knocked his legs out from under him. He fell to the ground and rolled out of the way from a fireball. He leapt up and then lunged for her midsection. They crashed to the ground together as he grabbed her. They rolled around the ground a couple of times before getting untangled. They rolled away from each other and leapt back onto their feet. How can you do this kind of stuff to me? Azula demanded as they faced one another. What kind of stuff? He demanded back. I should be mad at you, but I can't. I can't help but love you and it's driving me nuts. She bent an arc of fire at him. he rolled under it. But she was there as he came back up, punching his face. He blocked it, grabbed the arm, and threw her over his shoulder, in one motion. It was a move she was familiar with, allowing her to land on her feet. She turned around and drove her fist into his midsection, making him grunt slightly in pain. She tried to hit him again, but he yanked his hand out of hers and blocked it. She threw another punch, but he blocked it as well. They stood there, hands in deadlock, staring at each other. They weren't quite sure who moved first. But the next thing they knew, they grabbed each other's face and pulled it in for a kiss that was hot, passionate, and involved a good game of tongue wrestling. Their hands fumbled around, trying to open the other's shirt so they could feel more skin. He pushed her up against a tree, his hands going to her hips. She grabbed fistfuls of his hair in response, making him wince. He pulled her closer, pressing their hips together. They stayed like that until their bodies demanded air. They broke the kiss and stood there, gasping for breath. Well, Naruto said as he rested his forehead against hers. That's one way to stop a fight. Do you want me to attack you again? She threatened him half-heartedly. If it leads to this again, yes please. I'm still angry at you. The grin he had on his face disappeared when he heard those words. I know, he said as he stepped back from her, letting her step away from the tree. I'm sorry. She shook her head. You had your reasons. I was being selfish. You had the right to keep that secret. I should have realized that. Then why didn't you? I was angry at the fact that you didn't tell me. But I was also ashamed. Why would you be ashamed? I kept things from you. I was ashamed of that fact I found your secret, but not from you. But I guess I focused more on my anger than my shame. It was easier. She gave a laugh laced with irony. All of this is over one little secret. Naruto grimaced and kept his gaze at Azula. Some secrets that I have would be so dangerous that if it was leaked to the wrong people, I'd end up dead. Suppose if Yao Jing, or even the royal flaming asshole learned about my furry problem? They'd find ways to turn me into a weapon, just like the shinobi back home, or have me killed off. Heck, that secret alone would have barred me from serving in the military, let alone work as your bodyguard. Azula winced at the implications of what Naruto said. Knowing the court politics that she was used to, someone finding out Naruto's secrets that were best left hidden would have led to a whole new set of problems. Still, Naruto noticed the worried look on Azula's face. Will you be alright? He asked, concern filling his voice. I'll be fine, I think. You think? I wish I could talk to my mother right now. She was embarrassed to say that. Never had she wanted to speak to her mother than right now. He was a little surprised. Why's that? Even though I was cold to her when I was little, she still loved me and wanted to help me. She wore a small smile. I remember one night, there was a vicious thunderstorm. I was so scared of the noises and the lights flashing outside my windows. I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. I started to cry and somehow, she heard me. She came into my room, walked to my bed and asked if I was all right. Did you tell her to go away? She shook her head. No. I leapt for her and hung onto her, asking to make the noises and the lights go away. She held me close and rocked me to sleep. She looked up to the sky, just taking the blue color of it into detail. If she hadn't left, what do you think I would have turned out like? I think you're asking the wrong person, he told her truthfully. The right person would probably be her. That may be. But we don't know if she's dead or not, and if she is alive, where she is hiding. Silence fell between the two of them. Finally, she stepped away from the tree. I'm going to head back. You go ahead. I need to think something over. He stood in silence as she walked past him. Azula, you might want to consider fixing your shirt. I don't know about you, but I really don't feel like fending off an enraged Zuko. She looked down and saw that her shirt and her vest were still open, exposing her bust for anyone to see. She blushed and began to fix it. Pervert, she accused. If I remember correctly, you did the same thing to me, he replied with a grin. She just huffed in annoyance as she walked away. But if he had tried to look at her again, he would have noticed the smile she wore. Instead, he stood in silence as she disappeared from his sight. Hey, QB, you got a minute? The fox was more concerned about something else entirely. Little furry problem indeed, he muttered to himself. I am not little in any way, shape, or form. A furball, he mentally bellowed. What? I'm trying to talk to you here. Then what do you want, Kit? I want to run a question by you. Jiraiya had returned in a depressed mood. The women who were at the beach turned out to be prepubescent girls with their younger siblings. When he came back to the house, he chased Saka and Zuko around for a good 20 minutes. Azula came back at the tail end of it, so she saw the Toad Sage holding the two by their leg and shaking them. The whole thing looked funny to her, so she laughed. By the time lunch had come around, Naruto had rejoined them. There you are, Jiraiya said as he looked him straight in the eye. Gaki, you are in a lot of trouble. What? Just because you were misinformed, doesn't mean I need to be punished, he replied with a grin. Oh yes it does. Now come here. The Toad Sage made a grab for him. No thank you. He stepped away from the old shinobi's grasp and quickly walked into the house. He found the others sitting around in a nearby room. Hey Naruto, Toph greeted him without turning around. Naruto checked outside the door before closing it. They all heard angry footsteps outside a second later. Saka knew who it was instantly. You know he's going to come after you, right? He asked Naruto. Yeah, I know. But I'll just avoid him for now. He is going to get you, even if we'd have to hold you down, Zuko stated. He wore an expression of mock hurt. Why would you betray me like that? We got caught. It's only fair you do too. The door burst open and Jiraiya stepped in, eyes locking onto the blonde. Naruto, I'm going to make you regret you did that. Before you do that, there's something I need to do, the blonde replied, becoming completely serious. It showed in his stance and his voice. He saw that. It was the only reason he stopped. And what is that? He looked over at Azula and Zuko. You two, come with me, he ordered. Why? Zuko asked, curious as to what he wanted. There's something you guys need to see. He looked over at Jiraiya. This might take some time, so you'll have to wait on punishing me. Is it important? The Toad Sage asked. Yes. He looked the blonde right in the eyes. He matched the look, daring him to trying and stop him. It didn't last long. Fine, he sighed, but when you get back, you are going to be in a whole lot of trouble. The blonde shrugged. If you want to think that, go ahead. Just get going. Going, he said, looking over at the siblings. Come on, you two. What's going on, Naruto? Zuko asked him as they quickly made their way through the courtyard. What are you doing? Something the two of you need. They walked over to Fanning, who looked ready for flight. Before we go, he said, turning to face them, you guys need to put these on. He pulled out 2 blindfolds. What? Why? The scarred dragon demanded. You have to. It's a must. Naruto, what are you doing? Azula asked. He looked her straight in the eye. I'm going to show you one of my secrets. But to do that successfully, I need you two to put the blindfolds on. Just trust me on this, okay? The 2 siblings looked at each other, and then took the blindfolds. They climbed aboard Fanning and put the blindfolds over their eyes. Thank you. He climbed aboard and took the front. Let's fly, Fanning. The dragon unfurled its wings and took off. So how will we have to keep these blindfolds on? Zuko asked as he and Azula held on. Until I say otherwise. This had better be a real good secret. The former prince of the Fire Nation was already feeling nervous about this entire thing. You'll thank me for it later. They flew on in silence. For Zuko and Azula, the words flying blind took on a whole new meaning. This is what Toph must feel like when she was on Appa. Zuko thought to himself. It was a strange sensation to fly blind. If this was how Toph felt, he admired her courage even more now. This is very, very weird, Azula thought. It felt like she was holding on for dear life and she didn't even know what she was holding on to. If I fall, I'm going to kill Naruto. The two soon lost track of time as they flew on. All they could feel was the wind flying past their faces and the sound of wings flapping in the air. And yet, despite not being able to see, there was an odd serenity about the whole experience. Finally, they felt Fanning began to descend. Relief flooded the siblings. Are we there? Zuko asked as they landed. No, we have to walk for a bit, Naruto told him as they climbed off the dragon, the blonde helping the siblings. How much is a bit? About 10-15 minutes. He grabbed both of their hands. What are you doing? Zuko demanded. You don't want to get lost, do you? Trust me, this feels just as weird for me too. If you two are done, can we get moving now? Azula asked pointedly. We're going, Azula, we're going. He turned to the dragon. Try to stay out of sight. Fanning looked at him like he just said the most obvious thing in the world. Hey, just be thorough. He walked forward, bringing the two along with him. Can you tell us where we're going now? Zuko asked. All he knew was that he was walking down a path. That was it. No, you cannot see anything until I tell you otherwise. What's with all the secrecy, Naruto? Let me put it to you this way. I'm very close to breaking an oath by doing this. They walked on in silence. Both Azula and Zuko tried to figure out where they were by using the other senses they had. But they had been too reliant on their sight before now. The other sights were still adjusting, leaving them in the dark. But that just made them try all the harder. Finally, they came to a stop. We're here, Naruto told them. They heard him walk up and knock on a door. It's me, he said aloud. Are you alone? They heard a muffled voice asked from the other side of the door. No, I brought two others with me. Then leave. They have no idea where they are, okay? You're still safe. Why are they here? The voice demanded. They need to talk to you. Just look outside and you'll understand. They didn't hear a response from the other voice. After a few moments of silence, they heard the door open. He grabbed their hands again and walked through the door. Once they were in the room, he stopped and let go of their hands. If you need me, I'll be outside. They heard him walk out of the room and close the door. For a moment, all they heard was silence. You don't have to wear those blindfolds now. Take them off. They went completely still. Now that the voice wasn't muffled anymore, they knew who it belonged to. Slowly, they reached up and untied the blindfolds, taking them off. They opened their eyes and looked at the person sitting at the table in front of them. Ursa, the wife of Fire Lord Ozai. And their mother. Emma mother? Asked Zuko, hope filling his voice. That's really you? She smiled and stood up from her chair. Yes, Zuko, it's really me, she told him warmly. He walked over to her and pulled her into a tight hug. I'm so glad that you're alive, he said with relief. Tears threatened to fall down his face as he held her. And I am glad to see the two of you again. She looked over at her other child. Will you hug me, Azula? Your hands seem pretty full at the moment, she remarked drily. This looks like a drink is needed for all of us before we continue. There's a pot of tea in the kitchen. Her mother told her as she and Zuko broke the hug. I'll go get it. She walked into the kitchen, looking at the house as she did. Despite being well furnished, the place was sparsely decorated. She decided to keep her opinion to herself as she put the teapot and 3 cups onto a tray. She walked back to the table and placed the tray on the table, sitting down as well. Tea was poured and cups were taken. Zuko drank first. This is very good, he said as he examined his tea. Did you make this yourself? Ursa's smile was quite amused. Yes, I did. But when did you become a critic of tea? I spent 3 years with Uncle on a ship. You tend to learn the different kinds of tea out there quickly. The smile disappeared when she heard those words. Yes, you would have, after what happened to you. I am so sorry you had to go through that, Zuko. Who told you? Naruto did. He always tried to keep me informed of what the two of you were doing. The last time I heard from him was a couple of months ago, at the end of winter. So, he hasn't told you what occurred recently? He asked her. No. Why don't you tell me what has happened? And so, he did. He told what happened to him and Iroh during their exile and the return home. He told her about Akawan, Ba Sing Se, and the failed invasion of the Fire Nation capital. He told her about them joining the Avatar's group and busting Naruto out of jail. He decided to omit the part about being kidnapped, being sent to the other side of the world, and getting involved in a plan to kill someone, mainly because he figured Naruto didn't want anyone in the bending countries to know about it. Ursa's expression grew more and more astounded as the story was told. When he was done, she looked at her children like they had grown before her eyes. The two of you did all of those things in a few months? She asked. Pretty much, Azula answered shortly. She smiled and chuckled. It's nice to see that you two have gotten my spunk. It brings back memories. What do you mean? Zuko asked her. I was a little troublemaker when I was a child. Granted, I never did anything on the scale of what you two have done, but I like to think I left impressions. I can see how you and Naruto would get along, Azula remarked. How did he find out about you anyway? I'm not quite sure myself how he did it, but he managed to track me down and find my location. After he found me, I made him swear never to tell anyone where I was. Another secret he's kept, she muttered to herself. Ursa heard that. She also saw the look on her daughter's face. What's wrong, Azula? She looked at her. Can I talk to you, alone? She nodded once. Zuko, can you please go outside with Naruto? Azula and I need to have a private conversation. All right, I'll leave you two alone. He stood up and walked towards the door. Naruto, I'm coming out, he called out. Put the blindfold on before you do, Naruto told him from outside. Oh, come on, you've got to be kidding. Do it, Zuko, the blonde ordered. He gave an annoyed sigh and put the blindfold on. He opened the door and walked outside. Once the door was closed, mother and daughter alone. What's bothering you, Azula? Ursa asked her daughter. She didn't answer. She just looked around the house until her eyes settled on a painting on a nearby wall. That's you, isn't it? When you were younger? She asked. She could easily tell that the girl in the picture, standing to a young man, was Ursa. She followed her gaze until she saw the painting as well. Yes. That was painted when I was just a few years older than you are now. That man standing beside you, that's not Ozai. No, it's not. Who is it? She asked. A boy from my childhood. His name was Ikem. We were going to get married, but then your grandfather found where I was and had me engaged to your father. Ozai is not my father, she replied. Not anymore. She continued to stare at the painting. In another life, would he have been my father? Possibly, but that's not what bothering you, is it? No. Then what is? She didn't get an answer. She stood up and walked over to her daughter. Azula, she said, kneeling down in front of her. I'm right here. You don't have to hide anymore. Do you think I was a monster? She asked quietly. This was the moment of truth for her. To find out what her mother really thought of her after all these years. Ursa smiled and shook her head. Not once. You were my daughter and I loved you. I still do. That was the one thing she needed to hear. She began to tear up and pulled her mother into a tight hug. Ursa didn't resist, she just returned the hug. They stayed there until Azula stopped crying. Thank you, she said as her tears subsided. Are you better now? Her mother asked as she broke the hug. A little bit. But there is still something bothering you. Yes. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. It's about Naruto. Oh? You have boy problems? Ursa asked a playful smile. I'm glad to see you have normal troubles. I'm being serious here, her daughter protested, not seeing how this was at all funny. She laughed when she saw the look on Azula's face. Oh, I know you are. Why does he have to keep secrets from me? Well, why do you think he keeps them? To protect others from his past, I guess. It made sense. If she knew those secrets, people would have probably tried to use her to get to him, they would have failed, but it was the thought that counted. And do you hate him for it? No, she protested instantly. I just feel frustrated that I've been with him for 3 years and yet, it seems like I hardly know him. Azula, every person you will ever know will have at least one secret they don't tell others, Ursa told her. But how can I trust them if they have a secret? It's not a matter of trusting them if they're keeping a secret from you. It is how much you trust them despite the secrets they're keeping from you. What? I don't understand. Oh? She smirked. Would you tell Naruto that until you were 8 you used to wet the bed? No. That was something not even her dum-dum of a brother knew. And if he knew, he would never let her live down. And yet he still trusts you despite the fact you haven't told him that. Well, why would I tell him something like that? That was not exactly something you tell for the whole world to hear. And why would he tell you every single secret he has? Ursa asked her. Even if it means that you don't really know him? It's because he thinks it's for the best. And I would still trust him with my life. There you go then. They heard a knock on the door. I'm sorry, my lady, but we have to go back now, Naruto said. I understand. She stood up from where she had knelt. Azula stood up too. Are you going to come with us? She asked, daring to hope. But her mother shook her head. I can't, not yet. But we'll see you again, right? Do you want to see me again? Of course I do, she answered immediately. Both me and Zuko, We want back you home. Her mother smiled at those words. I'm glad to know that. But I can't come back. I have to stay hidden for now. You'll be able to come home soon, Mother, I promise you that. Thank you, Azula. I'll hold you to that promise. She gave her another hug. Go on. You and Naruto go mend your relationship. You're still in love with each other, so it won't be too hard. What? How did you know? She laughed. Why else would you have boy problems because of him? Azula turned around and headed for the door. She put the blindfold back on and opened the door, walking outside. Naruto took the door handle and closed it. Let's go, he said as he took their hands and started walking. They made their way back to Fanning and climbed aboard. The dragon took off and flew back the way they came. Like the last time, both Zuko and Azula lost track of time. However, they felt a little more used to it. Hey Naruto, Azula said as she held on to him. Were you aware of the fact that my mother knew about us? I think she knew before either of us did, he replied as he kept his eyes on where they were flying. What makes you say that? She once threatened to kill me if I ever let anything harm you, and I believed her. How is that new? She asked him. You get death threats all the time. Azula, your mother is one of the few people on this planet that I am utterly terrified of, he told her in complete seriousness. If she is mad and I'm the reason for it, I will be on my knees, bowing low, begging for mercy and or forgiveness. She laughed. That's funny considering it's coming from you. Sometimes she would forget how her bodyguard would feel the number of men he had lost and think of him as a person who didn't let anything faze him. You might laugh, but I'm still afraid of her. That comment made the other two passengers laugh. The rest of the flight was quiet. When they finally landed, both brother and sister gave a sigh of relief. I can understand why Toph was freaked out at first with flying, Azula stated as she took off the blindfold. It is definitely terrifying, Zuko agreed as he removed his own blindfold. He looked around. Where is everyone? The courtyard was completely empty. I don't know. Look, why don't you go look for them? His sister suggested. Naruto and I need to talk alone. He looked at both and then nodded. Alright then, you guys do that. He walked away, leaving the two of them alone. Maybe we should go somewhere a little more private? Naruto suggested as they stood in silence. You want to talk in your room or mine? She asked back. Mine. Come on. They walked in silence through the house until they reached his room. Alright, what do you want to talk about? He asked her as he walked into the room. She closed the door and faced him. I wanted to apologize. That wasn't something he expected from her. What? I'm sorry for being angry at you. It's your decision to tell your secrets, not mine. If you wish to tell me any other secrets, that's up to you. If not, then I will respect your decision. Thank you, Azula, he replied, relief showing in his voice. So, you're okay with the fact I have a demon with 9 tails living inside of me? Well, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact, she admitted. Would it help if you were able to talk with him? That took her by surprise. What? He sat down against the wall, crossing his legs in a meditative position. Do you want to meet the Kyuubi? He asked her. Will it do anything to me? He chuckled. No, he won't. You'll be safe, I promise. Then I'll meet him. Okay then. Sit down in front of me, she did so. He removed his shirt, leaving him topless and Azula struggling not to blush. He placed his hands into a hand seal and focused. A strange design, one she hadn't seen before, appeared on his stomach. It consisted of a black swirl and markings around it. What exactly is that? She asked, looking at the seal. It's the seal that keeps him inside, he told her. I need to place your hand on it. She suddenly felt very, very nervous. Are you sure about that? Yes, I am. It's the only way for you to get to him. Okay. She hesitantly placed her hand on it. Now close your eyes and breathe in and out. I'll take care of the rest. She did as she was told. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. After a few moments, she suddenly found herself standing in water. Alright, you can open your eyes now. She heard him tell her. She opened them and almost took a step back in surprise and shock. She was standing in front of a large gate in a room where the floor was flooded. On the gate was a piece of paper that had the kanji for seal. But it was the thing behind the gate that made her almost step back. What she saw was a very big fox sitting behind the gate. Its fur was an orangish red, except for around the eyes and the insides of its ears, which was black. Its eyes were red and looked very intimidating. The strange thing was that the upper body did not look like it belonged to a fox or even a canine. It looked like it belonged to a human. It even had opposable thumbs on its front hands. Azula, meet Kyuubi, Naruto said as a way of introduction. Kyuubi, meet Azula. You! Roared the Kyuubi when he noticed Azula. I've got a bone to pick with you, woman. Do I look at all small? No, I do not. I am quite big, and I am proud of that. You're still harping on about that? The blonde asked, surprised by the fact. Cammy, give it a rest already, would ya? It's not that big of a deal. That's easy for you to say, the fox retorted. You weren't the one who got picked on because you took the longest to get bigger. Why would you be picked on for that? Hey, you try living with 8 siblings who are the same as you. You tend to fight over various things. No, thank you. Living with one of you is enough for me. During the entire conversation the two had, Azula just watched them in stunned fascination. Finally, she couldn't help it anymore and began to laugh. Her laughter echoed throughout the entire room and got the attention of both Naruto and the Kyuubi. The two of you are too much, she declared as she kept on laughing. What? Asked Naruto. Real intelligent, kid, the Kyuubi told him. Could you sound any dumber? I don't hear you saying anything back. That's because I'm smart enough not to, you idiot. Please stop, you're going to kill me, Azula told them, still laughing. It was taking all of her willpower to fall to the ground. What is so funny, woman? The two of you are what's so funny. I don't know what I was going to think of you together, but it sure wasn't this. Oh wonderful, we're a comedy act now, he remarked with a lot of sarcasm. Would you stop talking? Naruto asked before turning his attention to Azula. If you weren't expecting this, what were you expecting? I really don't know, she answered as she finally managed to stop laughing. I guess it would have been something along the lines of him threatening to kill you or take control of your body. How stereotypical of you, the fox remarked. For the record, I don't want to take over his body. I have my own, thank you very much. Yes, we know. It's right here in its entire furry splendor, Naruto said with a little sarcasm. Nice to know you've noticed. It's kinda hard not to. You're right there. He looked at Azula. So, what do you think of him? I like him. I kinda wish I had him in my head. Trust me, you don't want that, he quickly assured her. Why not? He gets a tad perverted once in a while. What do you mean? She asked in a calm and dangerous voice. Remember all those times you either fought or trained near me? She nodded at his question. Every once in a while, he would try to look at your ass. Hey, it's a nice ass, the Kyuubi protested. It's got great curves and it's both firm and soft all in the right places. Besides, don't try to be on the moral high ground here, Naruto. We both know that you've taken looks at it as well. Oh, you did? Azula asked him with the dangerous tone, pinning him with her gaze. And did you look at my bust too? Well, we didn't see it a lot, considering you kept wearing clothes over them. But the few times you have shown them, I've managed to get a good look. They're a decent size right now, but there's always room for improvement. Also, stop talking already. Naruto interrupted the fox. You're putting us in a deeper hole. No, please, let him continue, Azula said, still using that same tone. Look, I'm sorry about that, he tried apologizing. Like I said, he sometimes gets a tad perverted. Hey, being stuck in here while I have to watch you refusing every single female who throws herself at you gets boring after a while. I have to do something to alleviate the boredom. Okay, that's it. We're done here. He reached over and touched Azula on the forehead. It sent a jolt through, forcing her to close her eyes. When she opened them again, she found herself back in Naruto's room, sitting across from him. Well? He asked as he opened his eyes. Do you find it easier to accept him now? Yes, I do. But I'm also interested in the fact that you were looking at my rear, she asked, looking him straight in the eye. Well, sometimes it was kinda hard not to, he admitted sheepishly. Is that an excuse? No, it's a simple fact. I really can't help myself. Oh? I'm a teenage guy, he told her. I'm going to notice these kinds of things. So that's why, huh? Yeah, pretty much. He fell silent as she stared at him, her eyes roaming up and down his body. What are you doing? I'm a teenage girl. I'm going to notice these kinds of things, she repented his words. She leaned forward and placed her hands on either side of his body, effectively trapping him. Their faces were just inches away from each other. But unlike you, I tend to do something about it. Oh? Like what? He asked with a smirk. She just leaned in closer. They were about to kiss when someone started banging on the door. Hey! The two of you have been in there long enough, Jiraiya's voice said from outside. Get out here and join the rest of us for dinner. What a way to kill the mood, huh? The Kyuubi asked his Jinchuriki. He ignored him. I want to castrate that old man, Azula growled, glaring at the door. I think you may have to get in line, Azula, he told her. We better get going. If we stay any longer in here, he'll bust the door down. You're right, but I still want to castrate him. He laughed at that. So, are we good? He asked after he was done laughing. She looked him straight in the eye. I meant what I said back in Konoha. You're not my bodyguard anymore. His face fell. Oh, I see. But, she said, getting his attention, I would like you to be my boyfriend. I would too, he told her. She kissed him on the lips, and he returned. It was a brief kiss, but it was enough for now. Come on. We need to get going. You're right. She backed away from him and stood up. She walked to the door but stopped as she reached for the handle. Hey, Naruto? He stopped with his shirt over his head. Yes? What is it? The shirt fell down without any problem. This is just my opinion, but I think you should tell the others about him. If you don't want to, I won't complain. But I still think you should do it. He fell silent at those words. Why should I? Would you rather have them find out the same way I did? It's just something to think about, she told him as she walked out of the room. He stood there in silence, contemplating her words. What do you think, Kyuubi? He finally spoke, asking the fox. It's your choice, Kit. I really don't have a say in the matter, do I? It is about you. Still doesn't change the fact I don't have a say. I guess you're right. It's my choice alone. He walked out of the room and through the house. He found the others sitting in the courtyard, eating dinner out in the open. He was about to join them when Jiraiya came up to him. All right, Gaki, the Toad Sage said. You've gotten out of your punishment for most of the day, but now you're mine. How long will this take? He asked. Long enough. I will make you pay for fooling me. Well, that's a shame. If you take your time with me, you might miss it. The blonde made it sound like what he was vaguely referring to was nothing. But it got the old shinobi's attention. Might miss what? Well, now's about the time the young women on the island go skinny dipping. He snorted in derision. Ha! You really think I'll buy that? It's true, I swear. That is something you wouldn't lie about. Sorry, not buying it, he said, holding his ground, but Naruto could tell he was weakening. That is such a shame, the Fire Paragon said. You're going to miss all those young, beautiful women swimming naked in the sea. I think there have been a couple of times when things have gotten a little hot and steamy down there. It didn't take long for the super pervert to crack. Damn you, Gaki! Jiraiya cried, giving in. If they're not there, I'm gonna kill you! He ran out of the house with a big, perverted grin. Well, that was easy, he said as he walked over to the others. You do realize you're dead when he comes back, right? Katara asked him. No, I'm not. How can you make that guy fall for the same old lie? Toph asked. Who said I was lying this time? He asked back with a smirk. They all stared at him. You mean there are women out swimming, not naked? Aang asked, a huge blush on his cheeks. Yep, pretty much. How do you know this? Suki demanded. An evening walk alone can lead to extraordinary things, he replied cryptically. But they all got his meaning. Why would you tell him something like that? Zuko asked. I thought we're going to torment him with this kind of thing. He shrugged with nonchalance. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to throw the guy a bone. Besides, it gets him off our backs, doesn't it? He's got a point there, Saka said. Besides, if we're lucky, the women will find him and kill him. Zuko scoffed at that notion. I doubt it'll go that far, he'll probably come back with a beating. Hey, we can dream, right? His question made everyone laugh. As Naruto laughed, he looked around at the others. He finally stopped at Azula. She's right, he thought. I should tell them. Like I said before, Kit, the Kyuubi told him. It's your decision. Hey guys, he said aloud, getting everyone's attention. I've got something to tell you,